Tonight, we're going back. Way, way back. Beyond medieval rot and Victorian soot. Before crusaders clanked through Jerusalem or Romans paved their roads. No, tonight, we drift even deeper into the dust of time, to the cradle of civilization, to a city soul that makes ancient Greece look like a startup. You've heard of Babylon, haven't you? Maybe you think of it as a place of grandeur, towering ziggurats spiraling into the sky, golden gates, wise kings, whispering scribes, and that legendary hanging garden that probably didn't even exist. Maybe you picture perfumed air, people in flowing robes reclining under palm trees. That is very cute of you. But tonight, you're not just imagining Babylon, you're living it. Except, and I say this with affection, you're probably not going to enjoy it. Because you wouldn't last a day. Not even close. You're going to wake up in a mud brick house that smells like sheep and old soup, surrounded by people who have absolutely no concept of personal space, privacy, or mouthwash. There's no air conditioning in the Mesopotamian summer. Just 115 degrees of shade and a thin cotton tunic that's stuck to your back by 7:30 a.m. You're going to eat something, probably barley mush, and drink beer for breakfast because the water will kill you. You're going to walk through streets slick with things we won't name this early in the video, and you're going to see and smell things that make you want to crawl back to the 21st century and kiss your toothbrush. You think cuneiform is cute? Try writing legal contracts by carving triangles into wet clay with a sharpened reed. Have fun making rent when half your paycheck is going to temple taxes and goat maintenance fees. Oh, and try not to get sued for breaking a vase. Babylonian law is efficient. If someone accuses you of theft, you better hope you're innocent, or at least have a good pair of lungs. Because trial by river is a thing. You'll literally be chucked into the Euphrates to see if the gods think you're lying. You're going to work, sweat, ache, itch, pray, drink, panic, and desperately try not to offend anyone who knows a priest. You'll barely make it to dinner without sunstroke, and when you do, the fish will be salted beyond belief and probably a little crunchy with sand. And then you'll be trying to sleep on a woven mat that smells like feet, while someone's cousin plays the lute 3 feet away. So, still dreaming of ancient glory? Good. Let's tuck you in, dim the lights, and drift off into the dust and drama of Babylon. And hey, if you find yourself smiling through the suffering, give this video a like. Maybe even subscribe if you genuinely enjoy it. No pressure, just gentle peer influence. Before we dive into today's story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? And what time is it where you are right now? Because I know that you, me, and everyone else tuned into this video, we all share the same little habit, even if we're scattered across the world, far from one another. Now, close your eyes. You're no longer here. You've just woken up in Babylon, around 1750 BC. And the day is already getting worse. You wake up before the sun rises. Not because you're an early bird or a productivity junkie. No, that mindset won't survive long here. You wake up because it's loud. Someone is already pounding dough next door, the goats are complaining about something existential, and one of the children, you don't know whose, just stepped on your ankle. There is no pillow. Your head rested on a wooden block last night. Yes, a block. A rectangular, unforgiving, carved-out chunk of tree. And you didn't even have it to yourself. You shared your sleep mat with at least 3 other people, one of whom snored like an ox choking on a flute. You sit up slowly, not because you're lazy, although maybe you are, but because your back feels like it slept on a basket of rocks. That's because it basically did. Your mat is made of woven reeds, and it's been absorbing generations of sweat, flea eggs, and spilled porridge since Hammurabi was in middle school. The room is dark, but not peacefully so. It's musty. There's the faint glow of morning slipping through the cracks in the mud brick wall, along with the warm, nostalgic scent of last night's cooked lentils, unwashed feet, and burning dough. You scratch. Not a graceful stretch, a full body, twitchy scratch. Because lice are a thing, and they love company. You're their bed and breakfast. There's no such thing as your room. The whole house, which is technically one room, with some half-hearted curtains hanging from sticks, is shared with extended family. Maybe even their neighbors. Personal space is a futuristic concept. A rooster crows, followed by someone yelling at the rooster. The rooster wins. You're already sweating, by the way. It's barely 6 a.m., and the air feels like someone opened a communal clay oven and invited you to live inside it. Babylon is not kind to mornings, or middays, or evenings, but especially not mornings. You get up, your knees cracking like ancient floorboards. You don't have shoes. You have leather thongs if you're lucky, but those have been chewed on by a dog whose name might also be Dog. The floor is dirt. Not dirt as in rustic charm, but dirt as in this is the same ground pigs sometimes walk across. You see a trail of what you sincerely hope is water near the corner. You avoid it. You don't ask questions. That's the Babylonian way. You step outside, ducking under a doorway designed for humans 4 inches shorter than you. Immediately, you're hit with the smells of early urban Mesopotamia, warm manure, a hint of raw fish, burnt bread, and somehow, hot copper. The air smells metallic. That's just what the city smells like when it heats up. And you haven't even had breakfast yet. Your first decision of the day? Where to relieve yourself. There is no bathroom. Just options. Behind the house? Risky. Communal waste pit? Riskier. The Euphrates River? If you can hold it until then, good luck dodging the eels. And yes, this is just the start of your day. So, you've woken up, you've accepted the lice, and now your bladder is gently tapping on your internal shoulder, whispering that the time has come. And by whispering, of course, I mean screaming. But this is Babylon. And Babylon, for all its cuneiform tablets and cosmic stargazing priests, has not yet figured out indoor plumbing. That revolutionary miracle won't exist for another few thousand years. You, however, exist now, in 1750 BC, and your options are, shall we say, creative. First stop, the communal pit latrine. If you're lucky, your neighborhood shares one. If you're really lucky, it hasn't overflowed. And if you're astronomically blessed, it's been recently shoveled out by someone other than you. You shuffle along the narrow alley between mud brick houses, dodging sleeping dogs and sleepy humans. The air already carries the unmistakable tang of ammonia, mingled with baking clay and the soft undercurrent of rotting lentils. You arrive at the latrine, which, let's be clear, is a square hole in the ground with 2 very judgmental flies circling above. There's no seat. No walls. Just a vague expectation of privacy that's immediately shattered when a boy skips past humming a tune and making eye contact. You crouch. You do your business. You try not to breathe through your nose. There is no toilet paper. Of course there isn't. This is Babylon, not a Marriott. Instead, your choices include straw, a smoothish shard of broken pottery known as a sherd, or a handful of sand and prayer. None of these are gentle. All of them are humbling. You reflect briefly on how far humans have come, or rather, how far we will come. Right now, though, you're just trying not to get a rash. You stand, awkwardly brushing your tunic with a handful of river reeds that look suspiciously like they were used yesterday. There is no hand sanitizer. You wipe your hands on your thighs and pretend that's hygiene. Some homes, The fancy ones might have a clay pot in a corner, used for late-night emergencies. But that's mostly reserved for the elderly, the sick, or people rich enough to afford someone else to empty it. And guess what? That's not you. You finish up and start your slow walk back to your house, stepping carefully over mystery puddles and pretending not to notice the man across the street doing the exact same thing, except less concerned with crouching modestly. There is no shame here, just function and order. You arrive home to find that someone else has taken your spot on the mat. That's fine. It's their spot now. You're not going back to sleep anyway. Not with the memory of the latrine still clinging to your soul. Instead, it's time for breakfast. Or what passes for breakfast. You're back inside now. Kind of. Technically, the line between inside and outside in Babylon is more symbolic than structural. The windows are just holes. The roof is flat and leaky. Privacy is optional. But this is where the food lives. So you pretend it's home. Breakfast is served. Which is a very generous way of saying someone hands you a cracked clay bowl full of beige sadness. It's pottage. Again. You don't know what's in it, and neither does anyone else. It's mostly barley, which, if you've never tried it unsalted, unbuttered, and boiled to the consistency of wall plaster, then lucky you. There may also be lentils, white chickpeas, or tiny pebbles. The crunch isn't entirely culinary. There's no sugar, obviously. No cinnamon. No maple syrup drizzle. This isn't a hipster cafe, it's 1750 BC, and the most luxurious thing about your breakfast is that it's warm. Sort of. You eat it with your hands, scooping it up between your fingers like you're trying to trap a particularly shy slug. Your hands are not clean, but neither is the bowl. At some point, you give up and just lick what's left, dignity fully surrendered to the gods of hunger. And now comes the drink. No water. Not if you want to survive the morning. Babylon's water supply is, how should we put this, decorative. It might look like a peaceful canal or sacred river, but that shimmering brown stream is carrying all the neighborhood's secrets straight to your immune system. So you drink beer. And I use the word beer loosely. It's cloudy. It's warm. It's flat. It tastes like fermented soup made by someone who's only read about fermentation in a dream. It has floating bits in it. You hope it's barley. You don't ask questions. Babylonian wisdom. If you can drink it without screaming, it's probably fine. Everyone drinks it. Men, women, children, your neighbor's goat if it gets into the stash. It's safer than water and mildly intoxicating, which is a bonus when you've just eaten a spoonful of beige despair. Sometimes, if the gods are smiling, there's fruit. A fig, maybe. Or a date that's mostly pit and sugar and memories of better seasons. But not today. Today, it's just pottage and beer and the lingering hope that lunch might involve something with flavor. You wipe your hands on your tunic again. The tunic, by the way, is the same one you slept in, and will work in, and sweat through. There's no wardrobe. There's one outfit. Maybe two if you're elite. But you're not elite. You're breakfasting in a building made of hardened dirt and goat hair. You're barely keeping your eyes open, and the sun isn't even high yet. And now that you're fed, bloated with yeasty porridge and flat beer, it's time to work. Because Babylon doesn't do rest days. You've eaten, you've digested just enough to regret it, and now it's time to earn your keep. Which is to say, sweat for hours on end, under an uncompromising sun, for someone else's grain. Welcome to Babylonian labor. It's not a job. It's a life sentence. First, let's be clear, nobody cares about your dreams here. You're not writing poetry. You're not studying the stars or making philosophical breakthroughs. You're either in the fields, at the kiln, or hauling something heavy to a place you don't care about. And your body is very much aware of this hierarchy. You step outside, squinting against the glare. The sun, which was already annoying an hour ago, is now aggressively shining at full blast. There are no sunglasses, no hats, just a piece of cloth on your head that's trying its best and failing miserably. If you're one of the lucky ones, you're off to the fields. That means walking to a patch of hard-baked earth with nothing but a hole made of wood and wishful thinking. Your job? Dig, sow, weed, repeat. Insects buzz around your face like they're auditioning for a role as the most irritating creature in Babylon. You swat. They return. You swat again. They multiply. The soil is both dusty and sticky, a paradox you didn't know was possible until now. It clings to your feet, your hands, your teeth somehow. Your tunic is already soaked through, clinging to places you'd rather keep private, and it's only mid-morning. Water break? Sure, if you enjoy diarrhea. Lunch break? Hilarious. Rest break? No, but you can collapse for a moment and pretend you're adjusting your sandals. And if you're not in the fields, you might be at the brickyard. This is where dreams go to die. You mold what clay with your hands, slap it into a wooden form, then lay it out to dry under the sun, which now feels like it's trying to kill you personally. The clay is hot, the ground is harder, and you're fairly certain your toes are being cooked from the inside out. If you're feeling particularly cursed, you're on a construction crew. Maybe you're helping build a ziggurat. That sounds majestic until you realize it's just carrying stones the size of goats up a slanted ramp, while your supervisor shouts vague encouragements like, "Don't die," and "faster." And if you're really unlucky, you've been assigned to the scribes. Oh yes, office work. In Babylon, it's not air-conditioned spreadsheets and espresso machines. It's sitting on a mat, hunched over a slab of wet clay, carving tiny wedge-shaped marks with a stylus that keeps slipping because your fingers are covered in sweat. One wrong triangle and the entire legal contract collapses into gibberish. By mid-afternoon, your lower back is staging a rebellion, your fingers are swollen, and you have a sunburn in places you didn't know had skin. You smell like old bread and anxiety. And there's still a few hours to go. Eventually, someone signals the end of the workday. Not because labor laws require it, but because your supervisor got tired or bored or passed out. You dragged yourself home, sore, sunsick, and sticky. And you haven't even considered dinner yet. But before food, you need to wash. Which brings us to Babylonian hygiene. You survived the workday. Barely. You're coated in a thin paste of clay dust, sweat, and other unmentionable things the wind blew your way. You smell like a man who fought a barley sack and lost. Your body is begging for a bath. But this is Babylon, where cleanliness is next to inconvenience. There is no bathroom, no tiled shower, no cucumber-scented shampoo. What you have is a clay basin. Maybe. If you're lucky, you share a large ceramic jar filled with river water, or worse, rainwater that's been sitting in the courtyard since the last thunderstorm 2 weeks ago. You remove your tunic, which at this point is so stiff it could stand on its own and possibly rent a room. You dip your hands into the basin, and the water is warm, not because it was heated, but because the air temperature hovers somewhere between desert kiln and hell's waiting room. You splash yourself with what feels like gritty soup. The water smells faintly of algae and iron, and more than faintly of whatever the last 5 people washed off in it. You rub your skin with sand. Literal sand. Babylonian soap, if you want to call it that, is mostly ash and animal fat, and unless you're wealthy or important or both, you don't have any. So you scrub with sand. It exfoliates and also removes hope. Your hair is not spared. It's rinsed, tangled, and possibly home to a small thriving ecosystem. You try not to think about it. You already know the lice aren't dead. They're just clean now, and somehow angrier. You reach for a cloth to dry off. There is no cloth. You stand in the hot breeze and let evaporation do the work. It's not fast, but it's free. Once reasonably dry, you put your tunic back on. It's the same tunic, just slightly less damp than before. It now smells like wet wool and self-pity. If you're from a wealthy household, or live in one, there might be an actual bathhouse nearby. The kind with a bit more privacy and a proper clay drainage system. But you're not part of Babylon's elite. You're part of the sponge optional class. As for brushing your teeth, that concept hasn't arrived yet. You might chew on a twig. You might not. You might gargle beer and pretend it's mouthwash. Either way, your breath could kill a meal at 10 paces, and no one will mention it because theirs is worse. You check your arms. Still attached. That's something. You look down at your feet. Caked in dust. Good enough. You are now, by Babylonian standards, clean. It's time to eat again. Because while Babylonian cuisine is a slow culinary punishment, hunger is the more persuasive devil. You're cleanish, sore, and somehow still upright. That's good. Because the sun's sinking low behind the ziggurat, the shadows are stretching across the alleyways, and it's finally, blessedly, dinner time. Not that you're expecting a 3-course meal. This is Babylon. The concept of appetizer hasn't been invented yet, and if it had, it would probably just be a smaller bowl of barley. You sit cross-legged on a woven mat that smells like oil and foot. Around you, your family, or what passes for family, gathers with that ancient, exhausted silence that says, "We survived another day. Let's eat before the sun notices." A clay dish is placed in the center. It's communal. No forks. No spoons. No plates. Just hands and hope. Tonight's feast? Boiled fish. Again. You don't ask where it came from. It was either caught in the Euphrates or purchased from a man who may or may not understand what fresh means. The fish is small, salted to the point of dehydration, and served with a side of gritty lentils and lukewarm onion mash. You pick at it cautiously. The bones are everywhere, waiting like tiny traps in every bite. One wrong chew and you'll be coughing up needles all evening. You try to ignore the crunch that might be a pebble or something worse. There's a flatbread too, hard as pottery, slightly charred on one side. It's meant to be torn, but you end up gnawing on it like a goat chewing bark. Still, it helps scoop up the fish paste, and that's something. As you chew, you listen. Someone's talking about the temple tax increasing again. Someone else mentions a cow giving birth to a 2-headed calf, which is either a miracle or an omen, depending on which priest you ask. A child sneezes, and 3 people mutter different spells to ward off disease. You reach for your drink. It's beer again. Still flat, still warm, still gently foaming with ambiguous bits. But it's wet. And by Babylonian standards, that makes it premium. You pause mid-sip as someone cracks a joke about moldy dates. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because if you don't laugh, you might cry. Or choke. Either way, the beer goes down. And then, the gods willing, there might be dessert. Which is a strong word. What you get is a sticky ball of pressed dates, possibly sprinkled with crushed nuts, or pebbles, or both. It's chewy, sweet, and vaguely greedy, a Babylonian Snickers if you squint and hallucinate a bit. The meal ends without ceremony. Someone burps. Someone else coughs dramatically. The mat is cleared, and any leftovers are scooped into a pot for tomorrow's breakfast/compost hybrid. Your stomach is full, but it's not happy. You feel heavy, warm, and slightly terrified of what's brewing inside you. But the day's not over yet. There's still religion, ritual, and the ever-present fear of offending a god you didn't even know existed until 5 minutes ago. You've eaten. You've scrubbed. You've survived. But before you can crawl into the sweaty embrace of your communal mat, you have one more obligation to fulfill. And no, it's not flossing. It's time to honor the gods. You live in Babylon, and Babylon is obsessed with the divine. Not just a little spiritual. Not casually superstitious. No, this place is institutionally paranoid about offending invisible forces with anger management issues. You're surrounded by temples, priests, omens, curses, blessings, more curses, and enough ritual to make a modern insurance policy look straightforward. There are gods for everything. Big ones, small ones, local ones, foreign ones. Anu, god of the heavens. Enlil, god of air. Yea, the watery wisdom guy. Ishtar, goddess of love and also terrifying vengeance. You don't just worship them, you navigate them like a minefield made of incense and existential dread. And the thing is, they're watching. All the time. Not metaphorically. Literally. Every sneeze, every spilled pot, every suspicious dream might be a message. Or a warning. Or a death sentence. Which is why, right now, you're standing in the family shrine, a dusty corner with a clay figurine, a bowl of stale barley, and a faint smell of something burning that probably shouldn't be. You bow. You mutter. You offer. You pretend to know the right words. You don't. But if you get them wrong, the crops might die. Or your goat might explode. Or your toenail might fall off and grow back as a worm. You light some incense, by which we mean a tightly bound clump of herbs and dried dung, and wave the smoke like you're directing traffic. Everyone in the household does the same, eyes half closed, lips moving in a chant that sounds like someone mumbling through a nap. And if someone had a bad dream last night, well, that's a whole situation. Dreams are not dreams here. They're prophetic letters from the gods, written in symbolic gibberish and delivered directly to your mental inbox. Did you dream of a lion eating a fig? That might mean fertility. Or war. Or you need to stop eating date paste before bed. Either way, you report it to the neighborhood priest, a man who smells like old scrolls and judgment. He reads a giant clay tablet filled with ominous triangles and tells you what the gods are trying to say. Spoiler alert, it usually involves giving him food. The priests are everywhere. They're the lawyers, doctors, weather forecasters, and therapists of the ancient world. Their job? Keep you from being vaporized by divine wrath. For a fee. You've probably already given 10% of your grain to the temple this month. Or else. And don't even think about skipping your offering because your knees hurt. The gods don't accept excuses. Only sheep. Or beer. Or the promise of your firstborn's haircut. By the time the ritual is done, the room smells like a barbecue hosted in a musty barn, and your soul is slightly more at peace. Or slightly more confused. Hard to say. Either way, you've done your part. You've bent, chanted, smoked, and trembled your way through Babylonian piety. Maybe the gods noticed. Maybe they didn't. You won't know until tomorrow. Or until your cow starts bleeding from the ears. Now, finally, it's time to sleep. The sun has finally dipped behind the horizon, and the relentless brightness of Babylon gives way to a softer, flickering gloom. You'd think this means peace. Rest. A gentle breeze, maybe. A cool drink and a quiet place to lie down. But this is Babylon. And the night has its own ideas. There are no bedrooms, not really. Just mats. Maybe a low cot if you're high up in the peasant food chain. If you're wealthy, sure, you might get your own chamber with drapes and cushions. You are not wealthy. You have a space on the floor. And it's already occupied by a cousin's cousin or an old man who somehow takes up twice his actual body size. You squeeze in anyway. The mat is made from woven reeds or coarse wool. It's warm. Not comforting warm, more like, I regret this immediately, warm. It smells like unwashed bodies, old soup, and faint disappointment. You lie down and immediately feel something small skitter across your ankle. It's fine. It's always fine. If it has less than 6 legs, consider it a blessing. Everyone's sleeping together. Parents, children, goats, neighbors. No one seems to care. Privacy is a modern luxury. Here, it's just another thing you'll dream about, right between clean water and dentistry. The noise doesn't stop either. A baby's crying in the next room. Someone's playing a lute with exactly 3 working strings. There's a rhythmic creaking sound coming from somewhere you refuse to identify. The neighbor coughs with apocalyptic enthusiasm every 6 minutes. And the dogs, oh, the dogs, are howling like they've just been told taxes are going up again. The air is thick, even at night. You try to find a cool spot on the mat, but they've all been taken by someone's feet. You roll over. You roll back. You kick gently. Someone kicks back. It's a beautiful, sweaty ballet. The mosquitoes arrive around midnight. They do not respect personal boundaries. You sweat. You miss. You sweat again. You hit something that yelps. You stop swatting. At some point, your eyes close. Your brain, exhausted and mildly heat-stroked, starts conjuring dreams. You hope they're not prophetic. The last time you dreamed of a fish with human teeth, the priest made you fast for 3 days. You're halfway into sleep when someone sits up and mutters about a bad omen. Everyone stirs. A short argument breaks out about whether the sound of an owl means death, illness, or simply that someone left the grain uncovered. It's resolved with a group prayer, another round of incense, and someone promising to visit the temple in the morning. Eventually, things quiet down. Sort of. You drift off again, this time sinking into a sleep so deep you almost forget you're lying on what amounts to a communal burlap sack. Tomorrow will bring more sweat, more clay, more barley, and probably more regrets. But for now you sleep. You wake up to someone whispering near your head. Not sweet nothings, more like muttered complaints about someone stealing their sandal in the night. Romance, it seems, is not the dominant flavor of morning in Babylon. But since we're on the subject, let's talk about love. You might think of ancient Babylon as a place of epic poems, star-crossed lovers, and desert moonlight courtship. That's very poetic of you. In reality, love in Babylon is a bit more transactional. Less Romeo and Juliet, more, here's your dowry, please produce sons. Marriage isn't about fluttery feelings or sunset walks by the canal. It's a contract. A literal one. On a clay tablet. With terms and clauses. You get married the way you rent an apartment. With a witness, a receipt, and the hope that nobody defaults. If you're a man, your family negotiates with her family. There's no online dating. There's no meet cute at the market where your hands brush over a fig and time stops. There's her father, his expectations, and a slightly suspicious goat in the corner being considered as part of the deal. The bride price might include silver, sheep, fabric, or, if you're feeling particularly romantic, a jug of oil. The woman's family contributes a dowry, household goods, sometimes land, and ideally a few good fertility omens. Once everything's agreed upon, the priest gets involved, because of course he does. There's a ritual. There's beer. There's maybe some music, maybe some shouting. And then boom, you're married. Love doesn't enter into it. Not right away anyway. You grow into affection. Maybe. Or you don't. Either way, you're legally bound to this person, and that bond is backed by the power of scribes and terrifying gods. And sex? It's not scandalous. It's just there. Expected. Functional. Babies are part of the bargain. As many as possible, given the infant mortality rate is somewhere between grim and don't get too attached. There is, however, a more formal version of sensuality at the temples. Sacred prostitution, as we call it, was part of certain religious rituals. Priestesses of Ishtar, for example, weren't just spiritual advisors. Their bodies were part of divine expression. It's less creepy when you remember that people genuinely believed this kept the cosmos in order. Divorce? Oh, it happens. Babylon is remarkably progressive that way, legally at least. A man can divorce his wife for childlessness, but she can also leave him if he's abusive or neglects his duties. Of course, someone usually ends up forfeiting property or enduring a walk of shame involving broken jars and loud neighbors. Adultery, though? That's a bad idea. Very bad. As in, drown them in the river. Bad. Or, tie them together and push them off a roof. Bad. Babylonian justice doesn't do subtle. Relationships here are part passion, part survival strategy, and part economic alliance. Love may bloom, but first, let's see your inheritance. And if you're a woman, well, let's just say the roles are even more interesting. You're a woman now. Yes, you. Try not to panic. You're still in Babylon, and suddenly, life has a slightly different flavor. One that's richer in restrictions, double standards, and the ever-present hum of people silently judging how well you sweep. If you're lucky, you were born into a decent household. You have a tunic that's only slightly patched, sandals that haven't crumbled, and maybe, just maybe, a servant girl who knows how to whisper gossip without being caught. But don't get too comfortable. Your value still boils down to three things: how well you bear children, how well you keep a house, and how many arguments you can avoid with your husband before breakfast. The good news? You have rights. Babylon is surprisingly generous with women's legal status, at least on paper. You can own property. You can inherit. You can even run a business, especially if your husband dies and leaves you holding the family go-farming enterprise. But don't let the word freedom get too cozy. With those rights come responsibilities and punishments, especially if you step out of line. Your day starts early. Before the sun, before the birds, before even the neighbor's eternally confused rooster. You sweep the floor. You feed the fire. You wash the barley. You prepare breakfast for 5 people who will eat it silently and leave their bowls for you to clean. Then comes weaving. Always weaving. You sit by the loom and push the shuttle back and forth like you're rocking a very slow, very silent, very ungrateful baby. Your back aches. Your fingers are blistered. And if the thread breaks too many times, someone will accuse you of summoning evil spirits. You might also be tasked with brewing the household beer. Yes, that warm, cloudy barley broth that makes everyone less angry at life. It's your job to stir the mash, strain the solids, and pour it into clay jars sealed with wax and prayer. If the beer turns out too sour, someone blames the gods. If it's too weak, someone blames you. You rarely leave the house. Not because the outside is dangerous, although yes it is, but because society doesn't trust women with sunlight and conversation. If you do go out, you cover your head and eyes. If you don't, you risk being mistaken for someone of professional availability. And that can get you arrested. Or worse, thrown into a river for moral cleansing. Temple life is one of your few escapes. You bring offerings. You light incense. You ask Ishtar or Marduk or Shamash to bless your womb, your weaving, your weary feet. You pray that your children survive the year. You pray your husband doesn't take a second wife, or a concubine, or get drunk and trade your good water jug for a goat with 3 legs. But even with all that you endure, because Babylonian women are made of more than barley and silk. You are tough. You are clever. You know where the good figs are hidden, how to hide a broken dish from your mother-in-law, and which priest gives blessings without charging extra. And at the end of the day, when you've done all your chores, soothed your screaming child, and cleaned a pot with nothing but grit and spit, you sit by the window, a hole in the wall, really, and stare up at the stars. You think maybe, just maybe, they're watching you back. Let's say, just for fun, you're a child now. Congratulations. You're about to discover that youth in ancient Babylon is not filled with laughter and lullabies. It's filled with chores, clay, and chronic disappointment. You're probably barefoot, half-dressed, and already sticky. The sun is barely up, but you've been tasked with chasing a goose out of the food store, fetching water from the canal, and collecting dung for the hearth. Your reward? Maybe a crust of stale bread and a loving swat on the back of the head. There are no toys. Not unless you count rocks, sticks, or a dead lizard you've named. Mr. Squelch. You might get a carved animal figurine if your family has time, or patience, for whimsy, but let's be honest. They don't. Now, if you're one of the truly lucky ones, you've been sent to school. That's right, Babylonian school. It sounds exciting. It's not. You attend a tablet house, a small mud brick room with no windows and a distinct smell of sweat, clay, and disappointment. Your desk? The floor. Your writing supplies? A lump of wet clay and a reed stylus. Your textbook? Also clay. Everything is clay. You live in a civilization made of mud. Your teacher is not kind. He's an ex-scribe who lost the will to live sometime around 1800 BC. He does not smile. He does not use inside voices. He carries a stick, and he's not afraid to use it. Frequently. And with enthusiasm. You learn to write cuneiform, those tiny little wedge marks that make modern shorthand look like finger painting. It's slow. It's hard. You get it wrong. He hits you. You cry. He hits you again, for crying. You practice by copying phrases like, "A good student obeys his teacher," or, "The gods punish laziness," or, "I will not play with dead lizards in class." It's repetitive. It's exhausting. Your hands cramp before lunch. You're also drilled in math. Not cute little sums, but complex hexadecimal equations. Because Babylon uses base 60 for reasons no one understands, even now. You don't know what 60 times 24 divided by the square root of goat weight is. But you better figure it out before your teacher figures out you didn't. And don't even get him started on mispronunciations. You once called the god Nabu, Nobu, and had to clean the courtyard with a reed broom so frayed it may have been invented as a punishment. Girls don't usually attend school unless their families are wealthy or part of the temple elite. Most girls are at home, learning to spin, cook, barter, and accept their futures with polite silence. By the end of the school day, which, let's be honest, is barely distinguishable from community service, you're mentally and physically broken, coated in clay, and humming the Babylonian national anthem. Please let me sleep without a mosquito biting my eye. But hey, if you survive, you might become a scribe. That's the dream. A life spent hunched over wet tablets in the shade, correcting the grammar of illiterate landowners. Prestige. Stability. an elevated chance of dying with all your teeth. Childhood here doesn't last long. You're considered a working part of society by age 10, and by 12, you're getting marriage offers, or apprenticeship deals, or temple assignments if you're especially doomed or divine. And if you think playtime might cheer you up, let's say you've made it through school, or a long day of work, or just survived another full-body baking session in the Mesopotamian heat. What now? Surely there's some joy in ancient Babylon. Something that doesn't involve barley or body odor. Well, yes. But temper your expectations. Entertainment here is not Netflix, nor is it poetry readings unless you count the neighbors shouting legal codes in a sing-song voice after drinking too much beer. But humans are humans, even in 1750 BCE. And where there's exhaustion, there's the desperate need to laugh at something stupid. The children play first. Their games are simple, chaotic, and usually involve chasing each other with sticks. Sometimes they play with pebbles, not marbles, mind you. Just pebbles. They toss them in the air and try to catch them, and if one accidentally hits someone in the face, that's called learning. Some have actual toys. Whistles shaped like birds, little kites with wheels, dolls made of cloth or wax, all delightfully flammable. There's even a few game boards around, the royal game of Ua, for instance. It's kind of like ancient checkers had a love child with modern passive-aggressive backgammon. The rules are vague, the stakes are high, mostly pride and scraps of flatbread, and if you cheat, your grandmother will scold you in front of the gods. Adults entertain themselves with storytelling, gossip, and, you guessed it, beer. Lots of beer. Communal drinking is a pastime, a ritual, and sometimes a form of therapy. You sit around a fire or a courtyard, pass around a jar, and listen as someone recounts the time they saw a demon near the temple, or claims they used to date a priestess of Ishtar, or insists their neighbor's goat is cursed. Music? Oh yes, there's music. People play lyres, harps, drums, and flutes that sound like sad whistles in heat. The musicians aren't always good, but they're enthusiastic, and that counts for something. Sometimes they'll sing, usually about gods, floods, or awkward love affairs involving moon spirits and poor decision-making. Dancing? Sure. Especially during festivals. And by dancing, I mean rhythmic stomping and awkward arm flailing while someone chants about barley harvests. But after a few drinks, everyone's suddenly a backup dancer for Marduk. And once in a while, you get the real spectacle, a public event. A religious festival, maybe. Or a ceremonial procession. Or if fortune smiles upon you, a mock battle or wrestling match. Two sweaty men in loincloths grunting and flinging each other into the dust while a crowd of half-drunk potters cheers and throws date pits at the loser. Gambling's also popular. You bet on anything, dice throws, dog races, even who'll get smote first during a thunderstorm. The priests don't approve, but they're too busy interpreting sheep livers to notice. In the end, Babylonian fun is earthy, chaotic, and heavily reliant on you not dying before sunset. But if you laugh once, genuinely, freely, under the glow of a flickering oil lamp with your belly full of barley beer and your mind fuzzy with ancient music, then it was a good day. You're walking home one evening, minding your own ancient business, when someone bumps into you in the alley. A jug falls. It breaks. There's shouting. There's finger pointing. And suddenly, surprise, you're in legal trouble. Welcome to Babylonian justice. It's fast, it's personal, and it has the emotional restraint of a drunk camel. You've probably heard of Hammurabi. He's the guy who made sure the laws were written down, in stone, with lots of dramatic flair and very little wiggle room. An eye for an eye isn't a metaphor here. It's an actual operating principle. You steal something? You lose a hand. You knock out a tooth? Hope you like soup, because you're losing yours too. There's no small claims court. No. Let's talk this over. The process goes like this. Someone accuses you, a witness chimes in, real or imaginary, and then a priest or judge, often the same person, makes a decision based on a combination of evidence, omens, and gut feelings. And if the evidence is murky, there's always the river. Yes, trial by water. It's exactly what it sounds like. You get thrown into the Euphrates, and if you float, you're guilty. If you sink, you're innocent. Congratulations. Now let's hope someone's standing by with a fishing pole and divine favor. Legal documents are written on clay tablets. Hundreds of them, carved meticulously with cuneiform, outlining every possible scenario. If a man accuses another man and cannot prove it, he shall be put to death. If a builder constructs a house and it collapses and kills the owner, the builder shall be slain. Fair, in a very permanent sort of way. Women aren't spared either. If a wife is accused of adultery, into the river she goes. If she's caught drinking in the wrong company, trouble. If a tavern owner doesn't report a criminal, executed. If you get drunk and insult someone's god, well, just start digging your own grave to save time. The law doesn't care if you're tired, if your goat wandered off, or if your neighbor is clearly just being dramatic. Babylon is about order, and order is maintained through fear, fines, and the occasional public dismemberment. But, and this is important, the system does work. Sort of. It keeps people in line. There's structure. There's consequence. People know the rules. And there's a weird comfort in knowing exactly what horrible thing will happen if you, say, slap a merchant or try to skip temple tax. So you learn to be careful. To keep your head down. To never borrow a tool without 3 witnesses and a signed tablet. To apologize quickly and loudly. And most of all, to avoid rivers whenever possible. Still, justice is justice. It may be harsh, but it's predictable. In a city where gods speak through dreams and livers, that's saying something. You wake up in the middle of the night with a sharp pain in your stomach. It could be indigestion. Could be food poisoning. Could be divine punishment for skipping that incense offering yesterday. But in Babylon, all 3 possibilities are treated the same way, with sheer panic and a visit to someone holding either a tablet or a sheep. Welcome to Babylonian medicine. There are 2 types of healers here, the ASAPA and the ASU. One deals in magic, the other in what we might generously call early science. And if you're really lucky, you get both, a tag team of exorcisms and herbal tea, delivered with equal parts urgency and vague doom. Let's say you go to the ASAPA first, the exorcist priest. He greets you with a stare that suggests he already knows what's wrong. You've angered something. Not someone, something. A spirit. A demon. An ancestor with boundary issues. He waves a goat scapula over your head, mumbles incantations in a language older than rain, and lights a bit of resin in a clay pot. The smoke smells like your old sandal caught fire during a seance. He'll ask about your dreams. Did you see a snake? A burning tree? A naked man dancing on a roof? Good or terrible. Depends on the context, the moon phase, and how much beer the priest has had that day. After the chanting, he might smear you with a paste made from crushed dates, powdered clay, and something suspiciously shiny. It's sticky. It itches. You're told not to scratch it, or the demon wins. Still sick? Time for the ASU, the physician. He's got a different approach. Less chanting, more. Let me boil this and rub it on you. He digs through a pouch of herbs, roots, and powdered beetles. He mixes it all into a mush with beer or warm water, depending on whether he wants you conscious or merely compliant. If your ailment involves a wound, brace yourself. There are knives, made of bronze, not sterile. If you require stitching, it's done with thread that may have been used to tie onions last week. Anesthesia doesn't exist, but you can bite down on a stick and scream into a clay jug if that helps. For internal issues, you might get an enema, administered with a hollow reed and a grim smile. And when none of that works, the fallback solution is a sheep. They'll kill it, examine the liver, and declare that your destiny lies in a vaguely kidney-shaped almond with a wart on the left lobe. If the liver looks wrong, you're doomed. If it looks fine, you're still sick but with hope. Recovery is rare. But if you do make it through, you get to brag about it. Survivors are viewed as chosen by the gods, or just too stubborn to die. Either way, rest up. Tomorrow's another day of sweat, dust, and barley. And your spleen probably isn't done acting up. You wake to a sound you've come to recognize instantly, the slow, deliberate thud of something collapsing from heat. Maybe it's a mud brick wall. Maybe it's your optimism. The Babylonian climate is a masterclass in extremes. It's hot. Not, oh, better wear shorts. Hot. We're talking full-body dehydration within 5 minutes hot. Summer arrives with all the subtlety of a frying pan to the face, and it doesn't leave for months. There's no shade unless you invent it, and no sunscreen unless you count clay dust and prayer. You try to stay in the shade, but shade moves. The sun doesn't just rise, it hunts. It creeps across the rooftops, devours your cool corner, and leaves you sweating like a guilty merchant in front of a tax inspector. Your tunic, damp before breakfast, is now glued to your back with all the mercy of a wet towel wrapped by a vengeful spirit. The air? It's dry, choking, and smells faintly of hot ash, sunbaked goat dung, and whatever died near the canal 2 days ago. And yet it floods. Oh yes. This burning desert also floods. You live next to the mighty Euphrates River, and it has 2 moods, trickle and biblical vengeance. Flooding season is chaos. The rain falls far away, in mountains you'll never see, and suddenly the river decides it's time to visit. The canals overflow. The fields drown. The roads turn to paste. And your clay house, built by hand over weeks of sweaty labor, starts melting like an anxious candle. You scramble to move your belongings, not that you own much, but try lifting a jar of grain while standing knee-deep in soupy mud. You slip. You curse. The jar breaks. The grain soaks. You question the gods. They answer by sending a mosquito to your eye. You climb onto the roof. You wait. You sweat at flies. You curse again. Your neighbor joins you with a sheep that refuses to sit still. You share a mat and a deeply existential silence. This is Babylonian bonding. The heat returns before the mud even dries. And then comes the humidity. A thick, clinging damp that makes every breath feel like slurping barley broth through a wool blanket. Your clothes never fully dry. Your bed mat smells like wet reeds and regrets. And still, the dust returns. It waits. It plots. One gust of wind and your entire house is sandpaper. Sometimes there's windstorms. Actual storms. The kind that rattle roof beams, slam shutters, and carry whispers that sound suspiciously like, "You should have stayed in the future." And yet the people endure. Somehow, you learn to embrace the dust, to live in the oven, to chase shadows like a lizard, and pray for breeze like a poet lost in a fever dream. Babylon thrives because its people are part sun, part sweat, and part sheer stubborn survival. You might think kings rule Babylon. After all, they get their names carved into stone, wrapped in divine favor, and read aloud during festivals with just the right amount of awe and trembling. Hammurabi this. Nebuchadnezzar that. But let's be honest. The real power? It's the temple. And the man with the stylus. Welcome to the dark heart of Babylonian bureaucracy. Every grain of barley you grow, every jar of beer you brew, every sheep you vaguely associate with, it's taxed. You are not free. You are not even mostly free. You are part of a massive, well-oiled, mildly terrifying system run by men who spend more time with tablets than sunlight. The temple isn't just a place of worship. It's a bank, a warehouse, a landlord, a grain magnate, a massive data processor made of scribes, priests, and that one guy who can memorize how many goats were born on your street in the last lunar cycle. Your first encounter with this system usually begins with a tax collector showing up at your door holding a tablet with your name on it. Sort of. It's written in cuneiform, which means it could also be the name of your cousin, your goat, or someone who once looked at you wrong. Doesn't matter. You're paying. Taxes come in many forms. Barley, naturally. Wool if you're in textiles. Fish, if you're unlucky enough to live near the docks. Even dung, if it's properly dried and shaped into bricks. And if you're short, no problem. You can pay in labor. Backbreaking, soul wilting, clay hauling labor. And if you thought the temple meant a serene courtyard of gentle priests and humming chants, you've got another tablet coming. Temples in Babylon are massive complexes, housing not only priests but workers, livestock, scribes, storage facilities, and possibly a small child named. What tax? They own land, property, slaves. They own you, if you're not careful. The priests, high-ranking ones anyway, live well. They eat fresh bread, wear fine linen, and chant with smug efficiency. They bless things, interpret omens, and occasionally decide the fate of your marriage based on the shape of a sacrificed chicken's spleen. And behind it all, scribes. Ah yes, the scribes. Silent, dusty, and terrifyingly thorough. They're the ones who write the rules, record your debts, and maintain hundreds of clay tablets sorted in shelves that haven't collapsed since the last flood. They write in cuneiform. Thousands of symbols. Each with tiny, annoying differences that could mean barley, or death by fine. You don't question them. Not unless you really enjoy late-night audits and legal threats carved in triangular rage. You try to keep up. You count your sheep. You count your jars. You hope you didn't misplace a goat or fail to deliver a bushel. Because if you do, a knock on the door, a frown, a priest, a fine, maybe worse. And remember, Babylon remembers everything. In clay. Forever. You're not a farmer. You're not a merchant. You're a tiny cog in the world's first paperwork machine. You're walking through the city, trying not to trip over a loose cobble or step into something warm and suspicious, when you look up, and there it is. The ziggurat. Massive. Looming. Totally impractical. It rises above the city like a stack of increasingly aggressive mud pies, each level narrower than the last, built layer by layer until it looks like someone tried to build a wedding cake out of bricks and hubris. It's not just a building, it's a statement, a divine power move, and it's sacred, which means you don't touch it, spit near it, or point at it while swearing unless you want to spend the next week trying to convince a priest you're not cursed. Ziggurats are temples, technically, but they're not the kind you stroll into and light a candle. No, the interior isn't even meant for people. Not normal people. The inner sanctum, perched all the way at the top, is a residence for the gods. That's right. A celestial Airbnb. And it's invitation only. The gods say Marduk, Babylon's main guy, lives up there. Symbolically. He doesn't need snacks or a bath, but his priests carry on as if he might. They leave food offerings, change his garments, and sweep the divine room as if divine dust were a thing. You climb the ziggurat only if you're someone. A priest, maybe. A royal. A high-ranking scribe with excellent knees. For everyone else, you worship from below. Preferably while sweating profusely and shielding your eyes from the sun glaring off the baked brick like a divine middle finger. The climb is brutal. Steep staircases, no railings, endless steps, and if you fall, that's an omen. A bad one. For you. For your family. Possibly for the entire city. You'll be lucky if someone doesn't sacrifice a chicken in your honor while you bleed on the courtyard floor. At festivals, the ziggurat becomes the stage. Priests ascended in processions, carrying statues, incense, and possibly the most majestic beard in Babylon. They chant, blow horns, and declare that Marduk is pleased, or angry, or currently unavailable. And during New Year ceremonies, the king himself must visit the top. Not to pray, to be humiliated. A priest slaps him, strips him of his regalia, and makes him swear he hasn't screwed everything up this year. If he cries, excellent. That means the gods are still with him. If he doesn't cry, trouble. Possibly a famine. Definitely some muttering from the priesthood. As you stare up at the ziggurat, you wonder who built it. Slaves? Probably. Laborers? Definitely. People just like you, sweating in the sun, stacking bricks in the name of God, glory, and someone else's legacy. It's beautiful, sure. It's impressive. But mostly it's a reminder, the gods are always above you. Watching, judging, expecting you to carry another brick. And so you do. Eventually you die. Don't feel bad, everyone does. In fact, in Babylon, you're probably a little behind schedule. Life expectancy isn't generous. If you've made it past 30 without dying of dysentery, childbirth, snakebite, or aggressive litigation, congratulations, you're practically immortal. But now it's your turn. And the moment you die, the bureaucracy begins. There's no resting in peace until the paperwork is done. Metaphorically, of course. The real paperwork is clay. And very, very heavy. Your body is prepared by family members, who are equal parts grief-stricken and quietly annoyed at the logistical inconvenience you've caused. You're washed with water that may or may not have been used to rinse yesterday's fish, wrapped in linen if available, and laid out in your best tunic, which might also be your only tunic. Then comes the burial. If you're poor, which, let's be honest, you are, you'll be buried under the floor of your family home. Yes, under the floor. Babylonian homes double as mausoleums. There's a good chance you've been sleeping above your grandmother for years. You just didn't know it. They dig a pit beneath the house, carefully avoiding your cousin's feet and the grain jar. Your body is lowered in, wrapped with whatever offerings your family can scrape together. A bit of bread, some dried fish, a broken jug, you know, just in case you get hungry in the underworld. The pit is sealed with clay and dust, and a few quick prayers are muttered. Maybe someone cries. Maybe someone just mutters. Well, that's done, and goes back to brewing beer. If you're wealthy, entirely different story. You get a real grave, sometimes a brick tomb, maybe even vaulted. Professional mourners might be hired to scream dramatically for hours. Musicians play dirges that sound like a goat arguing with a lyre. There are ritual meals, libations, and an after-party that suspiciously resembles a festival. But whether you're rich or poor, one thing's certain, your soul now heads to Akala, the Babylonian underworld. It's not a paradise. It's not even moderately pleasant. Akala is grey, dusty, and deeply underwhelming. Everyone ends up there. Farmers, kings, scribes, even that jerk who shortchanged you on barley last spring. You shuffle around in a shadowy limbo, wearing wings. Don't get excited. They're metaphorical, eating clay, and waiting for, well, nothing. No judgment. No eternal reward. Just a ghostly continuation of being underpaid and vaguely uncomfortable. And if your burial wasn't done properly, oh boy, then you become a restless spirit, an atima. You linger. You moan. You mess with livestock. You whisper to sleeping relatives. You knock over jars a night just to be petty. Your family might hire a priest to appease you with offerings, or shout at you through a hole in the wall. It's very therapeutic. Death in Babylon is more than an ending. It's an ongoing administrative concern. But hey, at least you're not paying taxes anymore. You're alive again, at least in this part of the story, and you need things. Food. Fabric. Maybe a new pot, since your last one tragically exploded during last week's cooking experiment. Welcome to the Babylonian marketplace, where the chaos is daily, the shouting is constant, and the chance of being overcharged is extremely high. The market is the heart of the city. It smells like spiced lentils, hot dust, fish left out too long, and ambition. The noise? A symphony of haggling, livestock complaints, and someone repeatedly yelling, "Good dates!" Not cursed, as if that's something you need to clarify. There is no money. Not the way you know it. Babylon runs on bartering. Silver is used, sometimes, in weighed chunks, not coins, but most of the time, it's your stuff for someone else's stuff. A jug of beer for 3 onions. A woven belt for half a goat. Your dignity for a better price on lentils. And it's not just you doing this. Merchants arrive from all over, traders from Susa, scribes from Yar, donkey caravans from Elam. Babylon sits at the crossroads of empires, which means everyone's here, and everyone wants to sell you something. The stalls are shaded by tattered cloth, the tables crooked, the goods often covered in a thin layer of strategic dust. Everything is negotiable. Everything. If you try to pay full price, the seller looks at you like you just proposed to their goat. Let's say you want some grain. You point to a sack. The merchant says, "That's the best barley in the city." You point out that it has weevils. He says, "They're extra protein." You counter with a broken pot and a curse from your grandmother. He offers a discount if you take the moldy dates too. You walk away with a slightly lighter bag of grain and the feeling you just participated in theater. Documentation? Absolutely. A scribe sits nearby under a tarp, carving deals into clay. You want to record that you traded your cousin's wool tunic for a basket of figs? There's a tablet for that. Literally. 2 copies, one for you, one for the archive. Bring your own reed stylus. Some deals are big. Livestock, land, slaves. Those happen at special counters, overseen by officials who look like they haven't smiled since the last eclipse. Everything is weighed. Everything is witnessed. Everything is carved in clay so that 3,000 years later, a bored archaeologist can read it and say, "Ah, yes, a man named Naubodin overpaid for an ox." There's also entertainment in the market. Street performers, acrobats, flute players, even fortune tellers who read dreams and occasionally palms. One woman claims she can divine your future from the way you chew on dried apricots. She might not be wrong. You walk away with a new jug, slightly suspicious bread, and the lingering worry that the man who sold you that pure oil was definitely holding a candle too close to it. But that's commerce in Babylon. You win some, you get swindled on most, and through it all, the trade never stops. You've heard the stories. Somewhere in the heart of this dusty, noisy, sweaty, goat-scented city, there's said to be a marvel. A floating paradise. A lush, terraced dreamland of waterfalls and shade, the hanging gardens of Babylon. Except, no one can quite agree if they existed. But let's pretend. Let's say they do. Let's say you, against all odds, are allowed a glimpse. You follow a servant through winding alleys, past the smell of boiled onions and boiling tempers. You pass mud brick homes, temple walls, market stalls, and finally, reach a towering structure draped in green. Your mouth goes dry, not from awe, but because your body forgot what humidity feels like unless it's coming from your own armpits. Before you now stands a wonder. Terraces rise like a stepped mountain, supported by brick arches and massive stone columns. Water trickles, actual running water, down channels carved into stone. It flows over ledges, trickling into small basins and cascading into hidden gardens below. There are trees. Not just scraggly date palms or reluctant fig shrubs, but tall, leafy, foreign trees. Cypress. Cedar. Maybe even almond. Their roots defy gravity, cradled in engineered soil that's somehow not blowing away in the wind. You step closer and the smell hits you. Not sweat, not dung, not dried fish, but blossoms. Sweetness. Wet earth. Something your nose doesn't have the vocabulary for because you've spent your entire life breathing brick dust and goat musk. How is this even possible? Irrigation. Pumps. Slaves. A ridiculous amount of labor. The theory goes like this. Giant screw-like mechanisms lift water from the Euphrates up the terraces, constantly, day and night. Someone, somewhere, is turning a crank while cursing the royal architect. This isn't public space. Oh no. This is royalty. Legend says King Nebuchadnezzar built it for his wife, a queen from the green hills of Media, who couldn't stand Babylon's beige monotony. So he gave her a mountain, a garden, an illusion of home. And what a romantic gesture. Nothing says, I love you, like hundreds of gardeners, water engineers, and probably a few bodies buried beneath the foundation. You look around. There are birds nesting in fig trees, a monkey screeching from a balcony, bees drifting lazily between flowers. Somewhere above, a royal woman gazes down through layers of shade and sighs, because even paradise gets boring eventually. You take it all in. The vines trailing from high terraces, the ivy curling around warm stone, the almost mystical absence of dust in the air. And for one brief moment, you forget the stink of latrines, the screech of bartering merchants, the scratch of lice, and the constant, relentless burn of the Babylonian sun. Then someone taps your shoulder. You're not supposed to be here. The garden is royal property. You're gently escorted out, not unkindly, just firmly. You return to the street. The heat hits you like a shout. And you wonder, did you dream it? Did it ever exist? Historians still debate that. You're awake. Again. Somehow. And the first thing you feel, besides existential dread and that one flea bite behind your knee, is your clothes. Or rather, your tunic. You only have one. Maybe two, if you're unusually blessed or unusually good at bribing laundry assistants. It's made of linen, or wool, or a blend of something that was once considered soft in theory, but feels more like sleeping in a burlap sack filled with sand. The standard Babylonian outfit is simple. A single, straight tunic that wraps around your body like a warm, itchy reminder that fashion here is purely functional. If you're a man, it reaches your knees. If you're a woman, it reaches your ankles. If you're a child, it might not reach anything because growing fast outpaces tailoring in this city. You tie it at the waist with a belt made from rope, cloth, or occasionally decorative leather if you're feeling fancy. This belt holds everything, your dignity, your pouch of silver dust, and the hope that your tunic doesn't flap open during a strong wind in front of a priest. There are no zippers, no buttons, no snaps. just clever knots, sweat, and gravity. Shoes? Optional. Most go barefoot, not as a statement, but because sandals are made from hide and string and fall apart the moment you do anything ambitious like walk. If you do have footwear, it's stiff, hot, and usually smells like someone else's feet. Possibly because they were. There are no socks. Socks are a luxury reserved for the gods, and even they are rumored to decline them. For the upper class, clothing gets fancier. Embroidered hems, dyed fabrics, jewelry made from beads, shells, and if you're rich enough, gold. But those people live behind palace walls and don't sweat in barley fields. You do. And your tunic now has 3 new mystery stains and a patch sewn on with a needle that was also used to clean fish bones yesterday. On colder days, a rarity, you might drape a shawl over your shoulders. Thick wool, coarse as a goat's mood, but it keeps you alive when the wind rolls in from the desert like a judgment. Headwear? Occasionally. Scarves, veils, headbands, mostly for protection from the sun or, if you're a woman, from the judgmental eyes of your aunt, who still insists that respectable girls don't let their foreheads show. Makeup exists, though it's more ritual than beauty. Soot for eyeliner, ochre for cheeks. Maybe a bit of powdered copper if you're trying to summon a spouse. Deodorant? That's a dream. Perfume is rare and used mostly in temples to disguise the smell of burnt offerings and regret. You look down at yourself. Dusty. Wrinkled. Slightly damp. Fashionable? Debatable. Surviving? Absolutely. Because in Babylon, your outfit doesn't need to be stylish. It needs to be breathable, washable in a bucket, and loose enough to flee in if someone accuses you of stealing a loaf of barley bread. And somehow, you make it work. You sit on the floor, hunched over a slab of moist clay. Your knees crack like reeds drying in the sun, and your back is already threatening a small rebellion. But this is serious. This is art. Or writing. Or both. It's hard to tell where one ends and the other begins when your pencil is a sharpened stick and your paper weighs 5 pounds. Welcome to Babylonian creativity, the intersection of function, form, and chronic wrist pain. Let's start with writing. The system is cuneiform, literally, wedge-shaped. Thousands of tiny marks pressed into clay in neat, orderly rows that resemble a duck's footprint after a nervous breakdown. These are not letters. They are syllables, ideas, entire philosophical statements reduced to carefully arranged stabs. There is no eraser. There is no backspace. You mess up a stroke? That mistake is now immortalized in mud for the next 3,000 years. Unless you decide to smush the whole tablet and start over, which means more clay, more time, more disappointment. And you don't just write for fun. Writing here is for contracts, temple records, legal threats, tax receipts, star maps, poetry, and deeply judgmental letters to lazy cousins. If it's important, it's written in clay. If it's very important, it's baked. Fired in a kiln so it becomes rock hard, immune to rain, mice, and eventually, archaeologists with too much free time. You need to train for years to become a scribe. It's the elite job, the Babylonian equivalent of being a data analyst, a historian, a lawyer, and a spell checker all rolled into one. Your toolkit includes a stylus made of reed, a water bowl for softening clay, and the haunting knowledge that your handwriting will be studied by future humans trying to decipher whether 3 goats actually means 3 goats. But let's talk about art. Babylonians don't just make bricks. They decorate them. Mosaics of lions, bulls, and fantastical beasts line the walls of temples and palaces. Glazed tiles shimmer in blue and gold, showing off scenes of war, worship, or royal boredom. Sculpture is less about beauty and more about permanence. Statues of gods and kings have huge eyes, tight curls, and the distinct expression of people who have just been told taxes are increasing again. Cylinder seals are the coolest thing you've never used. Tiny carved cylinders, often made from stone, rolled over wet clay to leave detailed impressions. Like stamps, only bureaucratically thrilling. Everyone important has one. Yours might show a divine scene, or a banquet, or a heroic goat battle. It's like a signature, a status symbol, and a personalized comic strip all in one. There's music too. Lyres, flutes, drums, tambourines. You might not call it melodic, but it's heartfelt, often used in rituals, storytelling, and scaring away neighbors during house parties. Babylonians value permanence. Their words and art were never meant to be fleeting. They carved their lives into the earth and fired them into history. And you've just finished carving, O Marduk, grant me patience, into a clay tablet the size of a dinner plate. Congratulations, you're now part of the cultural legacy. You're walking through the street, clutching your latest masterpiece, a freshly inscribed clay tablet detailing barley storage, when you pass a group hauling bricks toward a construction site. One man stumbles under the weight, his back arched, sweat pouring off him like melted wax. No one stops to help. He's not lazy. He's enslaved. Babylonian society runs on a hierarchy as rigid as a sun-dried brick wall. At the top, royalty. Then priests, scribes, merchants, and landowners. At the bottom, slaves, servants, people who don't own themselves, let alone anything else. Slavery in Babylon isn't racially based. It's economic, political, practical. You might be enslaved because you lost a war, or because you couldn't pay your debts, or because someone kidnapped you and sold you to a merchant who needed someone to hold the donkey still during a thunderstorm. You could be born into it, or fall into it by accident, a bad loan, a famine, a single illness that left your family unable to keep you fed. Suddenly, you're someone else's property, and the only thing more predictable than sunrise is your workload. Slaves do everything. They grind grain, fetch water, clean floors, haul bricks, paddle boats, and serve beer to people who complain it's not foamy enough. Some are trained as scribes, cooks, even physicians. But no matter how skilled you are, you're still owned. Like a pot, or a goat, or a really reliable tunic that occasionally screams. There are rules. Hammurabi's code outlines rights, sort of. If you injure a slave, there's a fine. If you kill a slave, there's a bigger fine. Not exactly justice, but better than nothing. Barely. Escape is rare. Babylonian cities are walled, the countryside is dangerous, and the moment someone sees you without a branded mark or documented status, you're either sent back or sold again. And punishment for running? Brutal. Public. Memorable. Some slaves can buy their freedom. A lifetime of saving silver bits, generous masters, or divine luck. It happens. Freed slaves sometimes become servants or craftsmen, but they never lose the scar of servitude. Not socially, not legally, not spiritually. Servants, not quite slaves, occupy a weird in-between space. Hired help. Poor but free. You live with your employer. You work for food, maybe shelter, maybe a tiny wage that you instantly owe to someone else. If you're lucky, you're treated like part of the household. If not, you're part of the furniture. And no, nobody wants to be in this system. But everyone's part of it. Even the middle class benefits from someone working silently at dawn, cleaning the ashes out of the oven, making the streets marginally less horrifying. You pass the brick hauler again. He doesn't look up. His back is bent. His hands are cracked. He won't be remembered unless someone writes his name on a wall, and no one will. But Babylon remembers in silence. Every baked brick, every ziggurat step, every dusty street, built with unthanked labor. Night has fallen again over Babylon. You've somehow survived another day of sweat, bureaucracy, and barley-based cuisine, and now, as you lie on your woven mat beside 3 relatives and a goat with insomnia, you close your eyes, hoping for peace. You will not get it. Because in Babylon, dreams are not just dreams. They're telegrams from the beyond. And possibly also to-do lists from minor deities with control issues. You drift off and dream. You see a fish with a human face. A black dog standing on 2 legs. Your dead uncle shouting about figs. When you wake, you are drenched in sweat, not because of heat this time, although yes, that too, but because you've just been given a message. Or a warning. Or maybe a divine Yelp review of your spiritual hygiene. This is where the supernatural steps in. You tell a priest. Of course you do. You can't just ignore it. Dreams are serious. They're read like coded letters, messages from gods, ghosts, or angry demons with a flair for interpretive symbolism. The ascipal, or exorcist priest, listens carefully. He's memorized hundreds of dream moments. His clay tablets are packed with entries like, if a man dreams he eats honey and cheese, favorable. If he eats sour dates, unfavorable. If he wrestles a serpent, extremely unfavorable. There's an entire bureaucratic framework for dream decoding. Each detail matters. What you saw, what direction it came from, what color it was, what foot you stepped with upon waking, and how many frogs you heard before breakfast. The outcome? Usually, a ritual. There are rituals for everything. You might burn a fish, or bury a lock of your hair under a date tree. You might chant to him at midnight, rub oil on your earlobes, and recite a prayer to Gula, goddess of healing, while standing on one leg. Don't ask why. You're not here to question the magic. You're here to survive it. Demons are everywhere. Lurking in shadows, under beds, in bad smells, and behind random, unexplained sneezes. There are demon repellents, chimes, amulets, especially the clay kind shaped like the terrifying Pazuzu, a wind demon with the body of a man, the face of a lion, wings of an eagle, and the vibe of someone who just ruined your dinner. You wear protective seals around your neck. Hang them on doorposts. Whisper names in dark corners. Because in Babylon, the spiritual world never clocks out. It's a 24/7, full-service haunting buffet. Even illnesses aren't just biological. They're spiritual. A headache? Could be heat stroke. Or guilt. Or a curse from that guy you yelled at last week for stepping on your mat. You'd better perform a cleansing just in case. And yes, even your nightmares might be taxed. If you dream of omens too often, a priest may demand a donation. Not for his trouble, of course. For the temple. The gods. Definitely not for his growing collection of fine date wine. You lay back down, eyes wide, staring into the dark. You pray not for sweet dreams, but for dreamlessness. Morning has returned, again, and as you rub sleep from your eyes and try to forget whatever symbolic nightmare chased you through your subconscious last night, you hear it. The distant clang of metal. It might be a smithy. It might be a festival. Or, and this is a very real possibility, it might be another army arriving at your city's gates. Because Babylon may be powerful, but it's never truly safe. You live in a constant state of mild alert. The kind of alert where your city is fortified, your king keeps a sword close, and the guards at the gate eyeball travelers like they're carrying cursed frogs. Babylon's history is written in siege dust and recarved nameplates. This place has been conquered, rebuilt, rebranded, and renamed more times than you can count, And you've been counting in base 60, so that's saying something. When war is coming, the signs are subtle at first. The markets empty early. Men gather in small, tense groups. Scribes start copying legal records onto smaller, more mobile tablets. And the priests? They look at the sky a little too long. Then the horns sound. The city wall, a massive baked brick fortress, becomes a hive of activity. Archers scramble into position. Guards bang shields for morale. Families rush to secure livestock. And if you're lucky, someone remembers to close the southern gate before a goat with no fear of guards makes a break for it. The Babylonian army isn't massive, but it's organized. Spears, shields, chariots drawn by on-edge donkeys who've never quite figured out war isn't their fault. The soldiers wear leather armor, helmets shaped like inverted bowls, and expressions of men who'd rather be anywhere else, but also really want to impress the gods of battle today. If you're a civilian, and your job is to stay low, keep your door barred, and pray that the attacking force gets tired, confused, or invited to a more exciting siege somewhere else. Sometimes it's a neighboring city. Sometimes it's mountain tribes. Sometimes it's a power-hungry king with too much silver and not enough chill. And sometimes it's Assyria. When the Assyrians show up, everyone starts making sacrifices immediately. Goats, bread, fig wine, anything that might buy you a few extra minutes before someone sets your rooftop on fire. Babylon doesn't always lose. Sometimes it wins. Sometimes it's just razed, rebuilt, and declared the city of peace by its new owners, who promptly raise taxes and redecorate the temples. And yet, the city endures. You hear the metal again. You peer out the window, a hole in the wall, really, and see guards training in the square. Just practice. Today. But tomorrow? Maybe not. You make a quiet offering. To Marduk. To Ishtar. To whoever might be listening. And you go about your day. Because even under threat of siege, someone still has to fetch the barley. It's midday, and the heat is unbearable, which means it's the perfect time to light a fire and start cooking. Because in Babylon, you don't cook to enjoy. You cook to survive. You cook to make barley taste like anything else. And sometimes, just sometimes, you get it right. Your kitchen is not a room. It's a corner. Maybe an outdoor space with a low clay oven, called a tanner, shaped like an upside-down jar that got too close to a thunder god. It runs on wood down or pure willpower. You keep it lit with kindling, patience, and the occasional bribe to the wind to stop blowing smoke in your face. There is no stove, no grill, no precision knobs. Just heat. Ancient, angry heat. You want something simple. Barley porridge? Already had that. Twice. Bread? Always. So you get creative. You start with onions. Always onions. Babylon is nothing without onions. You slice them, badly, using a knife that may or may not double as a hair-trimming device. You toss them into a clay pot with a bit of oil, which hisses like a priest who caught you cheating at dice. Then come the legumes, lentils or chickpeas, soaked until they're almost soft, which, in Babylonian terms, means not entirely stone. You stir. You pray to Gula, goddess of healing, that your next bite won't chip a molar. Now comes the meat. If you have it, you're lucky. You scored some dried lamb. Possibly lamb. It might also be goat. Or rat. You're not asking. You chop it into chunks, drop it in the pot, and hope it softens before your grandchild gets married. For seasoning, you add garlic, cumin, coriander, and, if you're feeling extravagant, a pinch of salt. Babylonian cooking is shockingly seasoned, considering the average peasant can't afford most of the spices. But if you know a trader or sleep with one, your meals might actually have flavor. Water goes in, just enough to keep things soupy. You stir, poke, taste, burn your tongue, and spit into the fire. This is cooking. Not art. Not joy. Just survival. But sometimes it works. Sometimes the pot simmers, the flavors deepen, and the smell that fills your home isn't just tolerable, it's pleasant. Warm. Spiced. Earthy. The kind of scent that might make someone smile as they sit cross-legged and wait with the crust of bread in hand. You serve it with flatbread, baked quickly against the hot inside wall of the oven. Burned on one edge, doughy on the other. Perfection. No cheese, of course. Babylon doesn't do cheese. Dairy isn't forbidden, but it's rare, perishable, and mostly reserved for elite feasts and questionable medical treatments. No dessert either. Unless you count dried dates rolled in crushed nuts, the Mesopotamian equivalent of a candy bar that leaves your teeth glued together for hours. You eat with your fingers. From the same bowl. With family, neighbors, strangers. You wipe your hands on your tunic, belch politely, and lean back against the wall. For once you're full. Maybe even content. And in Babylon, that's something worth remembering. The heat fades. Slowly. Reluctantly. Like a performer who refuses to leave the stage until everyone has thoroughly suffered. But at last, finally, the sun dips behind the western horizon, and Babylon exhales. The dust settles. The animals quiet. The last merchant covers his table with a cloth that does absolutely nothing to keep out the flies. The smell of scorched stone gives way to something softer, warm earth, smoldering coals, a faint trace of tamarisk smoke. This is evening. And in Babylon, it's magical, in the most ancient, sweaty sense of the word. You sit in the courtyard. Not just yours, it's also the neighbors. And your uncles. And whoever wandered in when the door was left open. Privacy is optional. Conversation is not. People gather around a flickering oil lamp. Its flame dances inside a clay bowl, casting shadows on mud brick walls like gods having a quiet argument. Someone tells a story, maybe about Gilgamesh, maybe about a friend's cousin who saw a ghost. It's hard to tell. The line between myth and gossip is very thin here. You sip warm beer. Again. It's somehow comforting now, like a companion who never says anything useful but always shows up. You nibble a hard figure. Your teeth protest, but you're too tired to argue. The stars appear. No city lights. No glowing science. Just endless black sky, pierced by tiny silver flames. Babylonians were stargazers, are stargazers. Not romantic still. Astronomers. Prophets. Professionals. They map the heavens like accountants map tax records. Each star means something. Each movement foretells something else. You look up and wonder, is that Venus or a warning? Crickets chirp from somewhere in the reeds. A dog howls in the distance. Someone's baby hiccups once, then falls silent. The sounds of the city mellow into a steady lullaby of murmurs, footsteps, and the occasional slap of a mosquito meeting its end. You lie back on a woven mat in the corner of the courtyard. The walls around you rise high and warm, holding in the day's heat. A cat tiptoes along the ledge above your head like it owns your lease. It probably does. Nearby, someone sings, low, almost a hum. A temple song, or maybe just a lullaby passed down through 100 generations. You don't understand all the words, but the melody settles into your bones like soft clay. The air cools. Not cold, never cold, but kinder. Breezier. You turn onto your side. Scratch your shoulder. Stare at the night sky and think, maybe, just maybe, it's not so bad. Until something bites your ankle. You slap. You grumble. You roll over. But still, the city sleeps. And for now, so do you. You're woken before sunrise. Not by roosters. Not by neighbors. Not even by the lice, who have mercifully taken the night off. No, this morning, you're woken by the sound of chanting. Deep, echoing voices float through the city, carried on the dry wind like smoke from a sacred fire. The priests are already at it. Again. As always. Because in Babylon, the gods never sleep. You drag yourself upright and peek outside. Down the alley, past the courtyard, and across the stone path still damp with dawn dew and goat drool, the temple looms. It's not a small building. It's not even a large building. It's the building. A sprawling complex of mud, brick, and divinity, with courtyards, inner sanctums, storehouses, kitchens, archives, and a suspicious number of places where people can lose goats and blame demons. The priests inside are not optional accessories to Babylonian life. They are the middle managers of the divine. They speak for the gods. They interpret the signs. They accept the offerings. They perform the rituals. And they keep receipts. Everything is recorded. Every sacrifice. Every omen. Every goat that twitched during a moonrise. If you sneeze at the wrong time of day, a priest is probably going to write that down, cross-reference it with Venus, and ask for barley. Today is a feast day. You forgot. Of course you did. It's the fourth one this month. The temples, and there are many, serve different gods. Marduk is the big one here. He's the supreme god of Babylon, the city's patron, and probably the reason your taxes went up. His priests are serious, stern, slightly shiny from constant incense exposure. They wear clean linen robes, comb their beards obsessively, and stare at you like they know you forgot last week's offering. You scramble to find something acceptable, a bundle of reeds maybe, a handful of dates, a token of, yes, I still respect you, please don't smite my barley crop. You walk toward the temple, past others doing the same. Most carry jars, bread, or sacrificial birds. One man has a lamb with a nervous expression. The rituals begin. There's chanting, drumming, smoke, more chanting. The priest swings censers full of burning resin that smells like a forest trying to confess its sins. A statue of the god is paraded around, clothed in fine fabric and garlanded with flowers, all of which will be recycled into priestly perks later. You kneel. You bow. You try not to yawn, because even the gods hate rudeness. And just when you think it's over, it's not. Now comes the reading of the omens. The priest consults a freshly sacrificed sheep's liver. Yes, the actual liver. He turns it, inspects it, mutters something about divine will, and announces that this city will prosper, unless it doesn't. You nod. You pretend to understand. You try not to think about lunch. Because faith in Babylon isn't about comfort. It's about survival. Pleasing the gods isn't just a moral obligation. It's a civic one. You don't want divine punishment. You don't even want divine attention. You just want to go home and hope the fig tree hasn't withered from your oversight. As you walk back through the temple gates, the sun now fully risen, you feel lighter. Not spiritually, just physically, because the priest took your last 3 figs. You wake up one morning, stretch your aching limbs, and do what every sane person in ancient Babylon does at least twice a week. Ask, wait, what day is it? Because time here? It's slippery. There are no numbered weeks. No 7-day system. No handy wall calendar with illustrations of goats and flower crowns. Instead, you rely on the moon. The actual, moody, shape-shifting moon, and the priests who stare at it nightly with the intensity of someone trying to guess the next 7 seasons of divine drama. Each new crescent moon signals a new month. And each month is packed with obligations, rituals, and feast days, most of which you forgot about until your neighbor loudly sacrifices something next door, and you scramble to figure out what god you accidentally ignored. The Babylonian year begins in spring, not with parties or sparkly hats, but with weeping. Yes, weeping. The Akita festival marks the new year. It's 2 weeks long and contains all the ingredients for an emotional roller coaster. Statues paraded through the streets, mock battles, royal humiliation, priestly performances, and the king being ritually slapped. The slap is important. It's a reminder from the high priest that the king is just a man, no matter how shiny his sandals are. If he sheds a tear, good omen. If he doesn't, get ready for crop failure. You, meanwhile, are expected to show up, fast, offer sacrifices, cheer, chant, and cry on cue. You'll witness symbolic reenactments of divine combat, where Marduk defeats the forces of chaos, again, and everyone pretends this guarantees a good harvest. Even though deep down, you know last year's onions were possessed. Outside the festivals, time continues its weird march. There are omens to track, eclipses, bird flights, birth defects, random fire puddles, all meticulously recorded by temple scribes who spend more time with star charts than their families. You learn to read the sky, not for beauty, but survival. A full moon? Good. Unless it's the 3rd full moon of the 3rd season and the goat sneezed facing north. Then it's bad. A comet? Terrifying. Always. Even the word comet translates roughly to, oh no, not again. Some months are longer than others. Some have names like month of the harvest, or month of the offering to Ninurta, or month of don't you dare forget this sacrifice. Some years even get extra months tossed in like divine curveballs to realign the calendar with reality. No one agrees when or why. The priests just announce it, and everyone nods and changes their market schedules accordingly. There are also lucky days and cursed days. You don't cut your hair on cursed days. You don't travel. You definitely don't propose marriage, build houses, or even bake flatbread unless you're feeling brave or have excellent spiritual insurance. So you live by calendar carved in clay, sung by priests, and whispered through generations of confused farmers. And you try, desperately, to keep up. Because in Babylon, time isn't a straight line. It's a spiral carved into the cosmos by gods who love symbolism and hate simplicity. You step out of your home with the best of intentions. You've bathed. You've tied your tunic. You've practiced your polite temple nod. You're just trying to buy some onions and return without drama. But this is Babylon. And Babylon is a city built not only of bricks and clay, but of whispers. Endless, sticky, judgmental whispers. Gossip here is not a hobby. It's a civic institution. Everyone talks. Everyone listens. Everyone remembers. The baker's wife saw you exit the temple 5 minutes early last feast day. The potter's nephew swears he saw you spill water and not say a prayer. Your neighbor's goat looked startled last week, and now everyone thinks you're cursed. We're cheating on your spouse. Or possibly both, with the same priest. Your reputation is a living creature. It travels faster than a royal messenger on a donkey with diarrhea. It moves from courtyard to courtyard, echoing off sun-dried walls, slipping through market stalls like a shadow with a smirk. And it matters. In Babylon, your name is more than a label. It's currency. It determines whether you're trusted with trade, whether you get a fair price on lentils, Whether your daughter receives a decent marriage offer or is politely ignored by everyone with functioning eyes. Slander isn't just mean, it's dangerous. Hammurabi's laws even cover it. Accuse someone falsely, and you might be fined, flogged, or fed to the river. But here's the catch. Proving slander is harder than finding a clean mat during flood season. So you walk carefully. You smile at neighbors. You bow to elders. You help that one woman carry her basket even though she's definitely the one who spread the rumor that you smell like pickled onions and goat breath. Even the market is full of tiny social traps. Bartering too hard? Greedy. Not bartering enough? Arrogant. Buying too many fakes? Suspicious. Who are they for? Who are you feeding? That's not your mother's fig total. There are no secrets. Only things people haven't repeated yet. And the worst part? It's often true. Babylonian homes have no ceilings, no insulation, and walls so thin you can hear a date drop in the next room. Every cough, every whisper, every poorly muffled argument becomes part of the collective urban consciousness. There are scribes who write official records. But everyone else? They write your biography with glances and muttered comments. You try to stay quiet, but even that's suspicious. Why so quiet? Someone asks. Hiding something? You can't win. You can only maintain. Keep your nose clean, your head low, and your tunic free of suspicious stains. Because in Babylon, your legacy might be written in clay, but your day-to-day reputation? It's written in whispers. You're standing at the edge of the Euphrates. It stretches before you, slow, wide, muddy, and profoundly indifferent. The water glistens under the harsh Babylonian sun, gently rippling like it's pretending not to be the most temperamental roommate in history. This river isn't just the source of water. It's a god, a trade route, a sewer, a courtroom, a killer. Let's start with the good news. The Euphrates gives life. Literally. Without it, Babylon is just a hot pile of dust and cranky goats. The river irrigates your crops, fills your clay jugs, floats your boats, and occasionally bathes your children if they can outrun the eels. The irrigation system is a marvel. A network of canals, ditches, levees, and swearing farmers stretches from the main channel across the farmland like a spider web woven by someone with chronic back pain and a deeply adversarial relationship with water levels. You don't drink from the river directly. That's a death wish. But you use it. Constantly. To water barley, rinse tunics, mix clay, cool pots, and maybe, just maybe, wash your feet, if you're ready to gamble with every fungus Babylon has to offer. Boats drift along it daily. Wide, flat-bottomed barges hauled by rope, loaded with jars of oil, bundles of reed, or a very nervous sheep tied to a pole. Traders come from upstream. Tributes are sent downstream. Messages, goods, and diseases float together in harmony. And then there's the bad news. The Euphrates is deeply unstable. Some days it's calm. A blessing. A breeze dances across it. You think, maybe today the gods are kind. Other days, not so much. A flash flood can drown your crops, your courtyard, and your sense of optimism in a matter of hours. One bad seasonal surge, and your home is under 2 feet of angry, silt-choked water that smells like old bread and disappointment. And sometimes, just for fun, the gods use it as a lie detector. Trial by river. You've heard of it. Maybe even watched it. If you're accused of a crime with no clear evidence, the priest might declare, "Let Marduk decide." You are led to the bank, eyes wide, lips dry. If you're guilty, the gods will let you drown. If you survive, you're innocent, and probably very angry. You've seen people go in. Some come out. Some don't. The water doesn't care. It accepts offerings, bodies, grain, goats, accusations, and dreams alike. Still, you live with it. You worship near it. You build your life around it. Because it's better to fear a God you understand than a desert that just quietly kills you without ceremony. So you watch the current. You nod to the boatman. You toss a pebble and whisper a blessing. And you walk away, one step ahead of the flood. You stare at your house. It's still standing. That's good. It's slightly leaning, a bit cracked, and smells like someone cooked lentils in the walls. But it's home. And it's made of the same thing nearly everything in Babylon is made of. Mud. Not just any mud. Special mud. Euphrates mud. Rich, sticky, silt-laced goo, hand-mixed with straw and sweat, then formed into bricks and sun-dried until they're hard enough to stack but soft enough to fall apart when a goat sneezes nearby. This is how you build a city in Mesopotamia. You take the earth, bake it in the sun, and pray it doesn't rain. Because rain is disaster. Mud brick homes are sturdy in dry weather. Cozy. Even beautiful in that. I live in a toasted biscuit sort of way. But during the wet season, they dissolve like cookies left in soup. A good storm can turn your living room into a swamp, your walls into paste, and your faith into a wet towel. So you maintain. Constantly. Every month, patch the cracks. Every storm, rebuild the outer wall. Every flood, scoop up the silt, rebuild the courtyard, apologize to the family goat who now thinks he owns your kitchen. Your home has 1 or 2 rooms max. A main space for everything, sleeping, eating, arguing, and maybe a second room if you're fancy or have unresolved sibling tension. No windows. Just holes. No doors. Just cloth flaps or wooden panels that creak like angry floorboards. Roofs are flat, made from wooden beams, reed mats, more mud, and entirely unsuitable for dancing, though people still try. You store things up there. Dry dates. Hide from in-laws. Watch the stars and wonder if they're judging you. There's no insulation. In summer, it's an oven. In winter, well, winter in Babylon is generous. But it gets chilly enough that you wrap yourself in whatever isn't on fire. Furnishings? Spice. Mats. Jars. A few stools. Maybe a family shrine in the corner, dedicated to a god who specializes in domestic stability and not letting the ceiling fall on your cousin. Temples, of course, are grander. They use fired bricks, glazed tiles, columns that don't sag like overcooked bread. Palaces are even worse, or better, with walls thick enough to stop a charging donkey and enough space to get lost during a fake delivery. But your house? Your honest, mud-walled, slightly lopsided home? It breathes with you. It cracks with you. It stands because you keep fixing it. Because Babylon may be built on clay, but it's held together by effort and desperation. You lean against your wall, flaking a bit of plaster from the corner, and think, it could be worse. Then you hear thunder, and immediately regret thinking anything at all. You walk into the market, not for lentils this time, not for barley, or sandals, or another cracked jar that claims to be watertight, but starts leaking secrets after 3 uses. No, today, you're shopping for protection. Spiritual, not legal. That's a different scribe. Babylon doesn't separate the mundane from the mystical. Your dreams, your cough, your bad luck at dice, all of it might be caused by spiritual imbalance, ghostly interference, or that neighbor who's definitely been side-eyeing their mat since last spring. So you go to the amulet stall. It's tucked in the corner, half-shaded by a frayed cloth dyed in what used to be blue. The vendor is a one-eyed woman with too many rings and not enough patience. She greets you with annoying look, as if your aura just whispered something embarrassing to her. What is it? She asks. Nightmares? Rash? Romantic despair? You pause. Yes. She grins and starts rummaging through a tray of charms. There are clay pendants with the wedge mark of Nabu, god of wisdom. Tiny figures of Pazuzu, that terrifying wind demon with wings and attitude, meant to ward off other, worse spirits. There are stones etched with star patterns. Pieces of copper wire twisted into loops and sealed with wax that smells like regret and cinnamon. Each one has a purpose. Protection from fever? There's a tablet for that. Protection from slander? Wear this shell. Can't conceive a child? There's a jar of powdered beetles with a spell wrapped around the lid. Need to make someone fall in love with you? Oh, now we're getting serious. She pulls out a bundle, tied with a red thread, perfumed, slightly warm to the touch. It contains hair, dates, crushed herbs, and a clay bead. Bury this under their mat, she whispers, and speak their name just before sleep. You pretend not to look intrigued. You buy it, along with 2 amulets to ward off stomach demons and an extra one for your cousin, who swears he's cursed because all his goats have turned left for 3 days in a row. And you're not the only one. Spiritual shopping is constant. The priest blesses one stall. The exorcist blesses another. Some vendors claim their clay bowls are spirit neutral, which is apparently a selling point. Even children wear chimes. Little animals carved from bone, hung around their necks to keep nightmares at bay. Some people even tattoo protective symbols into their skin. The message is clear: better safe than smoked. You leave with a pouch full of talismans, each one humming softly with potential. Are they magic? You don't know. But you sleep better with them nearby. And sometimes, that's all that matters. Because in Babylon, luck is fragile, the gods are moody, and a well-placed charm might just be the only thing standing between you and a month-long rash caused by divine boredom. You receive an invitation. Not on paper, of course. That's for the gods and royal decrees. This one comes by word of mouth, passed from cousin to neighbor to someone who's pretty sure they saw you borrowing lentils last month. There's a feast tonight, they say. You nod. You try to look pleased. Inside, you're already panicking. Because a Babylonian feast isn't just a meal. It's a performance. A test. A carefully choreographed dance of barley, hierarchy, and passive-aggressive compliments about someone's house mat arrangement. The event takes place in a courtyard, naturally, large enough for multiple families, noisy enough to scare off evil spirits and nosy animals. Clay lamps are lit and arranged in symmetrical clusters, because lighting is important and also because you're definitely being judged. You arrive carrying a flatbread offering. It's slightly burned. You pretend it's rustic. Everyone nods politely and places it in the shared contribution pile, which mostly consists of other burnt flatbreads and one suspicious fish that nobody wants to claim. The host, a minor merchant with a major opinion of himself, welcomes you. He's wearing his best tunic. It's cleaner than yours and smells faintly of imported oil. You hate him a little. Not openly. Just quietly. Respectfully. The seating arrangement is loose but strategic. Important people near the fire. Less important people near the door. You. Somewhere in between, next to the guy who always talks about his fig farm and someone's aunt who insists your tunic is inside out. It's not. She says it anyway. The food starts arriving. Dishes of lentils, barley stews, roasted onions, bread, dates, and fish so oversalted it could survive another flood. There's beer, of course, served in shared jugs with reed straws long enough to inspire jealousy from future soda drinkers. No one eats immediately. First, you compliment the host's home, even if the walls are crumbling and the cat clearly hates you. You ask about their family. You admire their oil lamp. You pretend not to hear someone whisper that last week their water jug exploded and it was probably a curse. Finally, the eating begins. You dip, scoop, chew, smile. Everything is good. Everything is fine. You chew through a lentil with the density of a tiny brick and nod enthusiastically. The conversation flows. Topics include temple gossip, harvest omens, recent livers read by priests, and whether or not the moon is judging someone's hairstyle. Someone brings out a drum. Someone else sings a short hymn to Ishtar. Someone tries to juggle dried figs. It's chaos. It's joy. Until it's not. Someone drinks too much. Someone else brings up land disputes. The host cousin says the wrong thing about a neighbor's daughter. Tension rises like steam from the stew. But you smile. You refill your neighbor's bowl. You tell a mildly amusing story about that time your goat tripped a priest. You survive. Socially. Because that's the real test of a feast, not the food, but the grace. Who laughed too loudly? Who brought the best date paste? Who will be invited next time? Who will absolutely not? When it ends, you leave with a full belly, a slightly singed tunic, and a fresh sense of political exhaustion. Because Babylonian feasts are delicious, yes. But mostly, they are work. The sun rises again, as it always does in Babylon, on time, unbothered, and with a particular glare that seems to whisper, "You'd better not be late for chores. You're a child in the city. You don't get weekends. You don't get toys with instructions. You do get responsibilities the moment you're old enough to stop actively trying to eat chuckle. At age 4, you carry water jars, the small ones. At 6, you sweep the floor and chase goats out of forbidden areas, which is everywhere. By 8, you're mixing mud for breaks and getting yelled at for putting too many pebbles in the mix. School? If you're lucky. If you're very lucky. Scribes, the elite class, send their children to a dubba or tablet house. It's exactly what it sounds like, a dusty room filled with angry children and clay. You practice writing cuneiform until your wrists ache and your dreams are filled with angry wedges. The teacher? Also known as the man with the stick. Corporal punishment isn't just common, it's practically the school motto. You learn quickly, or you learn while limping. If you're not headed for a scribal career, you learn a trade, from your parents, neighbors, or whoever has the patience to show you how not to set yourself on fire during cooking. Your toys are resourceful. You've got clay figurines, if someone's shaped one for you. Reed dolls. Beetles tied to strings. A bone carved into a spinning top. You throw rocks. You chase birds. You play pretend, reenacting rituals, fake sacrifices, imaginary lion hunts with the sandal and too much confidence. But playtime is brief. Because chores are forever. You help in the fields. You carry firewood. You scrub pots, patch thatched roofs, smear mud onto walls, and pretend you're not scared of the neighbor's extremely judgmental goat. The concept of childhood as a magical, carefree time? That's for future centuries. In Babylon, you are a small adult in training, expected to contribute, be quiet during priestly speeches, and never, ever, eat food offerings that aren't yours. Still, you have your joys. You laugh with siblings. You dance when it rains. You steal sweet dates from the bowl and deny everything. You carve your name into the courtyard floor with a stick, hoping someone notices and doesn't immediately assign you more sweeping duty. Sometimes, in the evening, your grandmother tells stories. Long, whining tales about gods, monsters, kings, and impossible tasks. You listen, wide-eyed, believing every word, because deep down, you already know Babylon is full of magic, and not just the kind that requires sacrificial birds. And when you finally collapse into sleep, covered in dust, crumbs, and pride, you dream not of toys or riches, but of growing up fast enough to have your own chores, your own corner of the house, and maybe, just maybe, your own goat. You hear the wailing first. A low, rhythmic sound rising from the neighbor's courtyard, voices straining upward, not from grief alone, but from duty. Because in Babylon, death is not quiet. Death is a performance, a necessity, a thing to be handled before it starts haunting you. Someone has died. It happens often, quickly, without ceremony at first. Illness, childbirth, snakebite, flood, bad dates, worse beer, a god's bad mood, take your pick. You stop counting how often the sick don't recover. The body is laid out in the courtyard. Not in a coffin, those are for the wealthy, and even then, mostly symbolic. The deceased is wrapped in a shroud, limbs bound, eyes closed with a mix of reverence and grim determination. Professional mourners are summoned. Yes, professionals. Women who specialize in grief. They sing, they scream, they tear their hair. It's part ritual, part social cue. Their volume and stamina are measured with suspicious interest by extended family. You join the mourners. It's expected. You chant prayers to Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld. You ask the gods to guide the soul safely. You ask them not to bring it back. Because the afterlife? It's not glamorous. Babylonians don't picture heaven. There's no paradise. Just the land of no return, the Akala, a gloomy shadow realm where all souls go, regardless of how many goats they donated to temples. The dead wander there, draped in feathers, drinking dust, feeding on clay, forever missing the light of the sun. It's not torture, just dreary. A divine DMB with no furniture and infinite paperwork. That's why the rituals matter. If you bury the body right, say the right words, offer the right foods, the spirit passes quietly. If you mess it up, they linger. They visit. In dreams. In illness. In that strange feeling that someone's watching you while you bathe. So you offer bread, beer, and dates to the soul. You bury them, sometimes under the house, in a courtyard corner, or in a nearby plot if you can afford land. Graves are simple. Shallow. Marked with a stone, or not at all. Bones settle into earth that's already tasted generations. The family observes mourning, a few days, or longer if the person was beloved, rich, or dramatic. You avoid temples for a time. You burn incense. You whisper to the corners of your home, asking the dead to rest. Please, stay quiet. Stay gone. There are ghosts in Babylon, not seen but felt. The Etemu, spirits of those not properly honored. They cause headaches, misfortune, bad dreams, and, on occasion, frogs in unexpected places. So you light a small fire. You place an amulet near the door. You pour a bit of beer into the ground and mutter the name of the deceased. Because if you want peace, you must keep the dead from becoming roommates. You're summoned to the town square. That's rarely good. Someone's shouting. Someone else is crying. A third person is holding up a clay tablet like it's going to bite someone. The air is thick with dust and righteous indignation. Welcome to Babylonian justice. Justice here isn't abstract. It's physical. It has names, punishments, fines, threats, and most famously, a very large, very smug stone pillar carved with the code of Hammurabi. You've seen it before. It's unmissable. Tall, dark, covered in cuneiform, and topped with a carving of King Hammurabi receiving the law from the god Shamash, as if to say, "Yes, this is divine, and no, you may not appeal." The code contains nearly 300 laws, and they are not gentle suggestions. They are specific. If a builder builds a house and it collapses, killing the owner, the builder shall be put to death. If it kills the owner's son, the builder's son shall be put to death. Yes, his son. Babylonian law is nothing if not emotionally confusing. The core philosophy? Lex talionis, the law of retaliation. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, goat for a goat. And in some cases, hand for a bull you broke in a minor dispute with a temple worker's cousin's uncle. Today's case? A merchant accuses a customer of shortchanging him with false weights. The customer claims the merchant cursed his barley. The priest is here. So is the exorcist. Also, someone's cousin who has no official role but is yelling anyway. The crowd watches. Because in Babylon, public dispute is also public entertainment. The judge, a city elder with suspiciously clean robes, steps in. He listens. He sighs. He quotes Hammurabi. A fine is issued. Silver grain, maybe a sheep. If things had gone worse, someone might have been thrown into the river. Again, the guards will sort it out, or branded, or had a body part removed with extreme confidence and minimal anesthesia. Punishments vary. Fines are common. Amputations less so, but not rare. Some laws even involve exile, or being forced to build a new wall section in the palace with your bare, slightly guilty hands. False accusations? That's a serious offense. Prove someone lied in court, and they get the punishment intended for the accused. It's Babylon's way of saying, "Are you sure you want to press charges, or would you like to go home with both kidneys?" Contracts are sacred. Business, marriage, loans, land, livestock, all are recorded on clay tablets and sealed with cylinder seals. Break a contract, and the court breaks your wallet, or your reputation, or occasionally, your ability to walk comfortably. The people disperse. Justice is served, or at least simmered to lukewarm satisfaction. You breathe a sigh of relief that you're not the one who lost a sheep and a hand today. But you walk a little straighter, talk a little softer. Because in Babylon, the law isn't a suggestion. It's a baked brick with your name on it. You've been summoned to discuss a match. Not a romantic match. Not a dramatic proposal. A transaction. A union of families, ledgers, goats, and barely contained panic. Welcome to Babylonian love, where passion exists, sure, but not without a thorough review of assets. Marriage in Babylon isn't about fluttering hearts. It's about barley yields. Social stability. The strategic placement of your children on the chessboard of clan survival. Your future spouse? Likely chosen by your parents, or your uncle, or someone with access to your family's livestock count. If you're the one getting married, you mostly stand nearby and nod at the appropriate moments. Let's talk dowries. The bride's family provides goods, often a mix of silver, textiles, oil, servants, and/or animals. It's a contribution toward the new household. The groom's family often matches this with a tutu, a bridal gift, meant to demonstrate they can actually afford this arrangement, and are not secretly living off temple leftovers. It's all written down, of course. Every clause, every contribution, every jar of oil and pair of sandals is documented on a clay tablet that will outlive your feelings, your marriage, and possibly your house. The wedding itself? Modest. A ceremony, a feast, a ritual offering to the gods, and you're officially tethered. You may now proceed to share a roof, a bed, a goat, and many, many arguments over water storage. Love might come later. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Couples live together, work together, raise children, and occasionally gossip about each other in the market. A happy marriage is quiet. An unhappy one? Loud, public, and occasionally reviewed by priests. Marital roles are predictable. Men are heads of households, but women run the home. They manage the storage, the textiles, the cooking, the servants, and the many unspoken social agreements that keep neighbors from poisoning each other's porridge. Some women are powerful. Businesswomen, priestesses, landowners. But most manage the hearth, the children, and the tension of trying not to be cursed by the in-laws. And if it all goes wrong, divorce is absolutely a thing. It's not simple. It's not painless. But it's codified. The Code of Hammurabi outlines it. Who keeps what, how the dowry is returned, whether the children stay, and what happens if someone was caught doing unsanctioned temple visiting after dark. Abandonment? Grounds for separation. Infertility? A common cause. Incompatibility? Not technically recognized, but with enough shouting, someone might listen. You pass a couple arguing near the well. She's pointing at a goat. He's pointing at the sky. No one's winning. You walk by slowly, hoping to pick up new gossip. And later you return home to your own shared mat, your own spouse, who may or may not be talking to you this week, depending on what you forgot to bring from the market. Love in Babylon? It's complicated, but it's real. Bound in clay, etched in stone, measured in grain. You're woken at dawn by the sound of bells. Not delicate, melodic bells. These are deep, iron-throated clanks that echo through the alleyways like a deity clearing its throat. Today is a holy day. Again. And that means it's time to feed the gods. Sacrifice in Babylon isn't optional. It's not symbolic. It's not an abstract metaphor for spiritual surrender. It's literal, frequent, messy, and taken very seriously by people who have memorized the smells of sanctified sheep entrails. You walk to the temple square, following the trail of incense and nervous livestock. There's already a crowd, priests in clean robes, citizens holding jars, and a handful of goats who've definitely figured out what's about to happen and are not on board. The temple servants prepare the altar. It's a raised platform of smooth stone, blackened by centuries of ritual. Above it looms a statue of the god, Marduk, this time carved with wide, unblinking eyes and a faint smirk that suggests he's seen things, judged them, and is still considering your barley contribution from last week. The first offering is a sheep. White, calm, obviously bribed with something before being brought here. The priest murmurs prayers, sprinkles water, draws a circle in ash. He raises a blade. Quick. Clean. A practiced motion that turns devotion into a puddle on sacred stone. You do not flinch. You do not blink. You nod sullenly, as if this all makes perfect sense. Because it does, in a way. The gods need to be fed. Not because they're hungry. Because it maintains the balance. The order. The unspoken agreement that if you keep their temples full and their altars wet, they'll keep your crops growing and your roof upright. The animal's organs are examined. This is crucial. The liver, especially. The priests read it like a weather report and legal contract combined. 1 out lump, and someone's going to fast for a week. 2, you might want to delay that wedding. There's chanting, processions, offerings of bread, beer, dates, oil. People kiss the altar. Some bow, others press their foreheads to the steps, murmuring prayers under their breath with the desperation of someone who suspects a minor demon is living under their bed again. And you hand over your offering, a small bundle of barley, wrapped in reed, tied with thread. You whisper your request. a safe journey, a healthy child, an end to your cousin's toe fungus. Whatever it is, the gods hear it. Do they answer? Sometimes. Sometimes your field flourishes. Sometimes it floods. Sometimes your child is born strong. Sometimes the goat dies the next morning and everyone nods slowly, grimly, and says you must have used the wrong oil. You leave the temple lighter. Not just because you gave up something. Because you participated. You showed reverence. You followed the rules. You acknowledge that this life, brutal and beautiful, is held together by rituals as old as the river. You smell like smoke. Your sandals are sticky. But you feel, if not blessed, then at least not cursed. And in Babylon, that's more than enough. You open your door one morning and there it is. A clay tablet. Still soft. Neatly inscribed. Warm from the hand of a scribe who either likes you, fears you, or is being paid by someone who doesn't. In Babylon, writing isn't rare. It's everywhere. And it's not just for kings and scholars. It's for merchants, neighbors, relatives, and very often, passive-aggressive messages about goats. Everything is written in cuneiform, the wedge-shaped script stamped into clay using a stylus made of reed. You've seen scribes hunched over their benches, styluses tapping like nervous beetles, muttering about verb forms while elbow-deep in mud. Clay is the default medium. It's cheap, abundant, and, when dried or baked, permanent. You can't tear it. You can't burn it easily. You can't even pretend you didn't get the message, because it was delivered by a teenager who stood there while you read it, scratched yourself, and sighed loudly. The tablet you're holding? A personal note. A love letter, maybe. Or a reminder from your cousin that he still hasn't been paid for that chicken you borrowed 2 seasons ago. You flip it over. It's both. Babylonian writing is painfully precise and sometimes hilariously vague. It depends entirely on who wrote it and how many cups of beer they'd had beforehand. There are tablets that say things like, "To my lord, may the gods grant you strength. About the barley, it is missing. I did not eat it. The rats are suspect." Or, "To my sister, I saw what you wore at the festival. I am concerned. Please return the tunic before Ishtar weeps." And yes, there are love letters. Dry, formal, awkward by modern standards, but sincere. "May the sun god bless your face. May your beauty be like fresh oil. I send you this tablet, and a small jar of figs. I wish to smell your breath." Romantic. In its own way. More often, though, these tablets are transactional. Loan agreements. Land sales. Complaints about livestock. Complaints about neighbors. Lawsuits over broken carts, stolen sandals, or the spiritual fallout of someone pouring water in the wrong direction during a festival. The scribes write them all. They are the gatekeepers of language, law, and extremely specific insults. An educated scribe can make or break you, especially if they dislike your handwriting or your choice in beer. Archives are everywhere. Temples, palaces, private homes. Stacks of clay tablets packed into jars, baskets, and corners, waiting for archaeologists 4,000 years later to misinterpret them as restaurant menus. You finish reading your tablet. You nod. You think about responding, but you'll need a scribe, and maybe some silver, and definitely someone to correct your spelling of. Respectfully yours. So you tuck the tablet into your pouch. Another mark in the great ledger of Babylonian communication. And you walk off, thinking, at least it wasn't from the tax office. You're stirring a pot of lentils when someone knocks on your door. Not the polite knock of a neighbor asking for onions. The firm, slightly too rhythmic knock of authority. You open the door slowly and there they are. 2 city officials in dusty robes, holding a clay tablet with your name on it, and exactly zero interest in your excuses. You've been conscripted. Military service in Babylon isn't a lifestyle, it's a seasonal inconvenience. You're a civilian most of the year, but when the king decides it's time to defend national interests, usually involving someone else's barley field, you get to become a soldier. You don't even get a uniform. You get a tunic, a spear, a small round shield, and a vague sense that your life expectancy has just been sliced in half by a priest reading Dot entrails. You join a group of equally anxious recruits, most of whom brought their own sandals and at least one hidden wine flask. Your training is brief. It mostly involves walking in a straight line, holding your spear without stabbing anyone important, and not dropping your shield during surprise goat attacks. Then comes marching. Babylonian armies don't teleport. They trudge. Through fields. Across rivers. Over stony hills that chew through your souls and your spirit. You sleep in tents if you're lucky, under stars if you're not, and on top of very irritable ants if you're cursed. The commanders shout in Akkadian. The soldiers mutter in curses. You learn quickly that the best strategy in war is to not stand in front of anyone swinging something sharp. When battle comes, it's terrifying. The clatter of shields. The bellow of horns. The smell of sweat, fear, and someone's poorly timed lentil breakfast returning to the surface. You line up in formation, shield wall forward, spears bristling, your neighbor already whimpering beside you. Opposing forces loom across the field, men with axes, strange helmets, and a collective expression of, "We didn't want to be here either." Sometimes, the battle ends before it begins, with one side retreating, bribing, or deciding the gods clearly favor the other team. Sometimes it's a skirmish. Arrows fly. People scream. Someone gets trampled by a chariot. You survive by crouching, dodging, and pretending to be dead with deeply convincing enthusiasm. If you survive, you're paid, in grain, maybe silver, sometimes a goat if someone generous dies near you. You return to Babylon limping, sunburned, and with the thrilling knowledge that someone else will be summoned next time. The elite troops? They're better off. Equipped with better armor, trained with chariots, pampered with actual food. But that's not you. You're just one of thousands. A placeholder in history's blood-soaked margins. You return home. Washington sleep. Try to forget the smell of panic and donkeys under stress. And you return to your life, hoping the next knock on your door is for figs. Not spears. He arrives just after harvest. Not a friend. Not family. Just a man in a clean tunic, carrying a stylus, a blank clay tablet, and the unmistakable scent of someone who's about to ruin your day. The tax collector. He doesn't need to announce himself. Everyone recognizes him. Thin smile. Thick tablet. Eyes like scales weighing the sins of your accounting. He's the one who asks calmly, how many goats you have, and then stares at the pen like it just lied to him. In Babylon, taxes are a certainty. Just like sand in your sandals and unexpected scorpions. You pay in silver, grain, oil, livestock, or your personal will to live. Whatever you have, the state wants a percentage of it. And not just once, regularly, seasonally, festivally, spontaneously if the king decides it's time to expand the palace bathhouse again. Everything is taxable. Land, labor, barley yields, beer production. Even the act of owning a date palm can come with a fiscal footnote. You once tried to hide a goat. Just one. Tucked behind the house, disguised with a strategically placed laundry line. The taxman walked past, paused, squinted, and said, "That cloth is breathing." You paid double that year. Failure to pay? Dangerous. Not immediately fatal, but irritating in the way that leads to increasingly stern messages from scribes and the eventual appearance of men who don't smile at all. And let's not forget tribute. If you live under Babylonian rule, which you do, or you'd be somewhere hotter and deader, you owe loyalty taxes. Gifts for the king. Offerings of respect disguised as forced generosity. These can include everything from cattle to skilled labor to rare goods brought in from the edges of the empire. Sometimes the king just wants lapis lazuli. You don't have lapis lazuli, but someone upstream did last year, and now everyone's expected to match it in spirit. So you offer your cousin instead. He makes excellent sandals and questionable soup. They accept. You keep a stash of silver hidden, not for survival, not for food, just for taxes. It's your, please don't take the children, fund. Everyone has one. And every year the collectors come. They smile. They record. They nod solemnly when you explain that the drought, the lice, and the curse from that one priest have severely impacted your barley output. They write it down. Then they take your silver anyway. Because Babylon, glorious and powerful, does not run on prayers alone. It runs on taxes. And you are the engine. You're standing at the entrance of the temple again. Not because you're particularly pious today, but because you're behind on your spiritual paperwork. The gods aren't just up there, aloof and mysterious. They're right here, housed, honored, and heavily managed. Temples in Babylon are not just sacred spaces. They're offices, banks, warehouses, theocratic nerve centers that hum with activity, incense, and the faint sound of someone arguing over the correct number of pigeons in a proper fertility offering. You step inside. The air changes immediately. Cool, dense, thick with centuries of burnt offerings and institutional formality. A priest glides past, spotless robe, polished beard, a gaze that says he can smell whether or not you brought a suitable donation. You reach the offering counter. That's not what it's called officially, but let's be honest, it functions like one. You hand over a small jar of honey. The priest accepts it, nods, and places it beside a growing collection of dates, oil, bread, and whatever that thing is in the corner that's buzzing slightly. You receive a token in return, a marker of your devotion. It's not magical. It's bureaucratic. Proof that you participated. That you're not a freeloader riding on someone else's sacrifices. Offerings vary. They depend on your request. Minor illness? A handful of grain. Major illness? A goat, or possibly your best tunic. Requesting a child? A lamb and a promise to name it something reverent, like Gift of Ishtar, or Thank the gods it's not twins. You pass through the temple's inner courtyard. It's busy, scribes lauding donations, assistants arranging incense, one person trying to convince a priest that a crow landing on their roof definitely means something urgent. And beyond that, the inner sanctum. You're not allowed in, of course. Only the high priest enters. Only he communes directly with the god, or more accurately, with the god statue. It's clothed, fed, bathed, and paraded on festivals like royalty. The statue, not the priest. Though frankly, both receive suspiciously similar treatment. The god's image is not symbolic. It's real. Present. If the eyes of the statue crack, bad omen. If pigeons roost on its head, extremely bad omen. If it falls over, go home. Pack your things. Leave the city. You make your way to the side shrine, a quieter space, reserved for personal prayers. You light a small lamp, mumble your request, and leave a token offering, a single fig in the hope that it's enough. Because in Babylon, faith is never silent. It's summed, burned, stamped, recorded, and when necessary, negotiated. You exit the temple feeling lighter. Not because your burden has lifted, but because someone definitely pocketed your fake. Still, you did your part. The gods are watching, the priests are listening, and your soul is, for now, an acceptable standing. You sit down to eat. You've been thinking about this meal all morning. You haven't tasted anything substantial since yesterday's fig offering, which, let's be honest, didn't count. Now, finally, it's time. A fresh bowl of barley stew, a wedge of bread, and a piece of dried fish that may or may not be judging you. You take a bite and pause. There's a crunch that shouldn't be there. It's not a pebble. You hope it's not a pebble. But Babylonian food, glorious as it can be, always carries a certain level of uncertainty, like playing dice with your digestive tract. Let's rewind. Food in Babylon is life. It's ritual. It's barter. It's also extremely situational. One good season, and you're feasting on fresh dates, tender lamb, honey-glazed onions, and a beer so thick it requires both faith and a reed straw. One bad season, you're boiling wild weeds, licking clay pots, and praying that the gods will take pity before the next flood, drought, or insect plague rolls through. And no, the insects. Grain is stored in large jars. You check it daily. You tap the sides. You whisper threats. And still, there's always a chance you'll dip in and pull out a handful of barley in Beetle's playing house. You sift, pick, shake, and then cook it anyway. Because that's what everyone does. Food is seasonal. Root vegetables, lentils, onions, garlic. Occasionally cucumbers or leeks. Dates are sacred. Figs if you're lucky. Bread is everywhere. Flat, charred, dry, damp, chewy, or accidentally weaponized. Fish from the river? Risky, but often the only meat you'll afford this week. The rich dine better, of course. They hire cooks. They have spice blends. They import cumin from far-off lands and act shocked when yours tastes like disappointment. They dine in courses. You dine in bulk. Illness? Oh yes. Parasites? Constant companions. Stomach upset is more common than conversation. You know people who bless their meals not out of habit, but out of genuine hope. And let's not forget water. It's rarely clean. You draw from a cistern, let it settle, strain it through cloth, and still taste mystery. The safest drink? Beer. Low alcohol, high protein, brewed thick and sour with bits of bread. You drink it all day. Even your children drink it. Especially your children. Because the beer doesn't kill them. The water might. Still you eat. You chew the stew, ignore the crunch, and tell yourself it was just a particularly roasted lentil. You tear bread, dip, swallow, sip beer, and remind yourself this is a good day. Because the sun is up. The grain jars are mostly full. The children haven't stolen the last onion. And the air only smells mildly of something dying in the canal. You finish your meal. You burp. You thank the gods, even the one who probably invented worms just for fun. And you wash your hands in a basin that hasn't moved in years, telling yourself, at least you're not hungry. It's evening in Babylon. The sun is slipping behind the ziggurat, casting long shadows across rooftops. The heat is fading, slightly, and a breeze carries the smell of roasting onions, dust, and distant livestock-related regret. And you're headed to be entertained. You don't have a theater. You don't have a screen. You don't have actors with perfect teeth pretending to be dramatic while wearing costumes that defy the laws of gravity and modesty. You have something better. You have your neighbor's cousin with a lyre and a lot of free time. Music in Babylon is everywhere. Every celebration, ritual, festival, Even funeral is soaked in melody. The instruments are ancient and beautiful. Harps strung with gut, lyres shaped like questionably designed bulls, drums made from animal hides stretched over frames, flutes carved from bone or reeds that squeak delightfully off-key. There are musicians who train at temples. There are buskers in the market who play while balancing on crates and insulting passing goats. There are children who make up songs about lizards and get stuck humming them for days, to everyone's irritation. The song you hear tonight? A love ballad, supposedly about Ishtar and some shepherd who turned into a tree. Or a frog. No one's sure. The lyrics get fuzzy, and the singer keeps winking at someone in the front row. You clap. You sway. You try not to laugh when the drum player drops his stick and pretends it's part of the rhythm. Art is no less vibrant. Your walls, yes, your crumbling mud brick walls, are painted. Faded now, but once bright with images of gods, beasts, flowers, and things that might be either sacred symbols or very early versions of the family cat. The potters down the lane gossip while they work. Each jar tells a story, geometric, symbolic, occasionally suggestive. You once bought a water jug and only noticed weeks later that it had an entire poem about goat love etched around the base. Sculptors craft tiny figurines of gods, spirits, and household protectors with too many eyes and suspiciously wide grins. Children play with clay animals. Merchants display glazed tiles. The temples commission grand mosaics, blue, gold, lapis lazuli, so bright you can see them from across the river and feel slightly guilty for not attending morning prayers. And of course, stories. You gather in courtyards. You lean in. You listen as an elder recounts the tale of Gilgamesh, part king, part demigod, all bad decisions. You know the ending, but you still feel a pang when Enkidu dies. Again. You laugh. You sigh. You feel part of something. Because even without instruments tuned to perfection, without theaters or stages or curated playlists, Babylon knows how to entertain. It knows how to stir the soul with a song and a drum and a slightly offbeat flute solo that somehow makes everything feel alive. You walk home smiling, humming the last few notes under your breath, and ignoring the child next door who insists on singing the lizard song one more time. The sun hasn't even risen fully, and already your wrist aches. You're seated on a low bench in a square mud brick room, clutching a stylus and staring down at a fresh, perfectly smooth tablet of clay. The surface is blank, untouched, full of potential, and full of danger. You're in the aduba, the tablet house, Babylon's version of school. And it is not a place for daydreaming. Scribes are the elite. They hold power not by sword or coin, but by words, or more precisely, by wedges. Cuneiform wedges, carved into clay with excruciating precision. They record everything: laws, treaties, grain counts, insults, omens, dreams. Literacy isn't a skill, it's a weapon, a career, a curse. You want to be a scribe. Or more accurately, your father wants you to be a scribe because he's tired of patching walls and thinks you have nimble fingers, which is definitely not a compliment after your third tablet cracked last week. The teacher walks in. He's already scowling. You straighten your back. You whisper a prayer to Nabu, god of writing, wisdom, and mercy on the fingers of small children. Copy the model, the teacher says. He slaps down a master tablet, old, worn, carved with the divine precision of someone who has never had to share a stylus with a sibling. You glance at it. You blink. You start to sweat. Today's assignment? A hymn to Shamash. 60 lines. One smudge stroke and you're doing it again. Your clay's too wet. No, now it's too dry. Your stylus drags, leaves a gouge, and now the sacred line about justice reads more like a thread about fish. The teacher frowns. He raises a stick. You straighten again. This is normal. Discipline is part of learning. Mistakes are met with stern corrections and occasionally, light whacks that leave emotional wedges deeper than any stylus can carve. Around you, other students groan. Someone's tablet shatters. Someone else sneezes and ruins an entire paragraph. The air is thick with dust, sweat, and the sharp smell of fear-based education. You learn more than writing here. You learn math, astronomy, law. You memorize king lists and how to correctly phrase an accusation of sheet theft without getting countersued. There are no notebooks, no pens, just clay and time. You've been here for years. You've earned calluses, earned respect, and finally, your teacher nods at one of your tablets and doesn't immediately sigh. Progress. Becoming a scribe isn't about talent. It's about endurance. It's about showing up, again and again, carving your future into clay one agonizing wedge at a time. Eventually you'll graduate. You'll wear a new robe. You'll sit at your own table. People will come to you for contracts, spells, love letters, and tax ledgers. You'll have power. And you'll definitely take too long writing your cousin's name on their wedding invitation, just for revenge. You tilt your head back. Above you rises a massive, layered tower, the ziggurat of Babylon, stacked in stages like the gods themselves designed it while half asleep and slightly tipsy on divine nectar. It's no ordinary building. It's the stairway between earth and sky. A cosmic bridge. A spiritual antenna where priests climb higher not just to be closer to the heavens, but to understand what they're trying to say. And today, you're here to help carry supplies. Ziggurats are not hollow. They're not temples inside. They're solid platforms stacked atop each other, each level smaller than the last, like a very determined cake. Temples sit atop them, yes, but the structure itself is more symbol than shelter. More sacred mass than usable space. You trudge up steep steps, sweating, carrying a bundle of fresh reeds and trying not to trip in front of the assistant astrologer, who once said your sandals looked ambitiously repaired. At the top, priests watch the sky. They've been here since dusk, tracking stars, watching clouds, counting the movements of the planets. Because in Babylon, astrology isn't a hobby, it's a discipline, an official job, a divine responsibility. These men wear robes. They mutter in mathematical tongues. They sketch star charts onto tablets and occasionally shriek softly when something unexpected appears near Jupiter. You're not sure what today's reading is, but judging by the whispering, the urgent comparisons, and the one apprentice who just dropped a stylus and said, "Oh no," with deep, historical dread, it's not good. The priests interpret signs. A red moon? Ill omen. A shooting star? Change is coming. An eclipse? The king is definitely going to sacrifice something, and everyone prays it's ceremonial. Celestial events shape decisions. They determine when to plant barley, when to launch wars, when to hold festivals, when to cancel weddings. Yes, that's happened, and you're still not over it. The ziggurat is sacred ground. You don't climb it for fun. You climb with purpose, to measure shadows, read omens, consult with the gods, and occasionally drop a jar of incense in front of your superior and pretend it was intentional. The stars are a library. The priests are the readers. And the rest of Babylon? You wait. You listen. You obey. Because if the gods have written their will across the sky in patterns of fire and frost, it's your job to understand it. Or at least act like you do until someone else gets blamed for the drought. You hand off the supplies. You bow. And as you descend the ziggurat, the wind cools your face, and the stars above, still glowing, still silent, watch you with the quiet smugness of celestial beings who know exactly how stressed you'll be tomorrow. You're sitting in the market when the whisper starts. They've arrived. Not a caravan. Not traders. Not messengers. Foreigners. Immediately ears perk up. Vendors straighten their stalls. Grandmothers clutch their amulets. Someone, possibly your neighbor, casually hides his worst pottery behind the better pots and lights some incense just in case the gods are watching this specific moment. Because outsiders, in Babylon, they're exciting, but also terrifying. Babylon sits at the crossroads of everything: trade, conquest, culture, crime, gossip. People pass through constantly. Elamites, Kassites, Hittites, traders from distant cities whose names sound like throat clearing. They bring goods, languages, coins, and suspicion. You glance at the newcomers. They're clearly from far off. Their tunics hang differently. Their sandals are tied wrong. One of them has a beard style that would make a priest faint. They speak your language, sort of, enough to ask the price of fish, not enough to understand when they're being politely insulted. The elders grumble. Foreigners bring change, and not the kind you can spend. Bad omens? Outsiders. Disease? Outsiders. Flooded canal? Must have been the Arameans. Someone's goat gave birth to a frog. Definitely outsiders. But still, trade happens. The city needs them. Their lapis, their timber, their strange little fruit that causes burping in intense dreams. Babylon is too big, too hungry, too proud not to do business with the very people it grumbles about. So you learn to walk the line. You sell to them, but don't invite them home. You ask about their gods, but pretend yours are obviously better. You take their silver, then purify your hands just in case they don't bless things properly in their weird faraway temples. And if one of them stays too long, marries someone local, becomes a fixture, Babylon adjusts. Slowly, awkwardly, with side eyes and overly loud market conversations about how things used to be. But it adjusts, because everyone was an outsider once. Even the gods, some say, wandered into Babylon and decided it was the best place to set up a divine bureaucracy. You finish your beer. You watch the foreign traders haggle over dates with the vendor who just doubled her prices and is pretending not to speak their dialect. You smile. Because for all the suspicion, the grumbling, the incense burning, and the goat-related accusations, Babylon wouldn't survive without its outsiders. They bring stories, mistakes, trouble, gold. They remind you that the world is wider than your courtyard and more complicated than a tax ledger. And you nod politely at the strangers. Because one day soon, you might be the outsider in their city, and you'd really like someone there to sell you decent bread. You're sitting in your dusty courtyard, knees aching, stomach full of slightly undercooked barley, watching the sun sink over the walls of Babylon, golden, enormous, and far too enthusiastic about setting everything on fire with its final rays. You've survived another day. Barely. You woke up on a straw mat with a backache that started 3 lives ago. You fetched water that tried to poison you. You negotiated taxes, attended a feast, dodged curses, recited hymns, and managed not to insult a priest or a particularly sensitive goat. But you're tired. Bone deep tired. Because as majestic as Babylon is, with its towering ziggurats, gleaming temples, and walls so massive they make other cities weep, it's also unforgiving. It doesn't wait for you to catch your breath. It demands your sweat, your offerings, your very compliance. You remember the heat, the smell, the ever-present background noise of donkeys, children, arguments, and the occasional divine omen fluttering through like a bird with suspiciously timed wing patterns. You remember the fear of spirits, the careful respect given to clay tablets that dictate who owns which patch of land and which child owes which goat to whom and why. You remember the food, the dry bread, the beer that could double as soup, the dates so sweet they stick to your fingers for 3 days and one ceremonial offering. You remember it all. And you know, deep down, that you wouldn't last. Not really. Not in the long run. Because Babylon is beautiful, yes. It is advanced, organized, spiritual, creative. But it is also brutal, complex, unyielding. You have no soap, no clean water, no painkillers, no freedom of movement unless you're rich or divinely sanctioned. Your rights are carved in stone, but so are your punishments. Your future is written in stars, livers, and the occasional goat dream. Medicine is based on which god you angered and how much date syrup you can afford. Relationships are contractual. Children are employees. And sleep, sweet sleep, is something you earn with exhaustion, not luxury. And yet, you feel something here. A connection. Because Babylon, with all its contradictions, is undeniably human. It's full of dreams, struggles, laughter, music, clay tablets that say things like, "I'm sorry I miss your festival, my goat was ill," which could have been written yesterday, if yesterday had involved a lot more parasites. It's strange how close they feel, these ancient people, these dusty citizens, their gods, their complaints, their hopes. But it's also a relief, because when you finally crawl into bed, a real bed, in a room with running water and no chance of involuntary conscription, you know. You made the right choice being born thousands of years after all this. So go ahead. Fluff your pillow. Close your eyes. Drift off. The ghosts of Babylon will keep the night watch, murmuring in cuneiform, dreaming of dates and divine bureaucracy. And you? You can sleep. Grateful. Free from curses. Free from mud. And free from ever having to explain again why your barley shipment was 3 days late. Thanks for listening, friend. If you enjoyed this long, sleepy wander through ancient Babylon, remember to like the video, subscribe for more bedtime history stories, and share it with someone who could use a little ancient misery to fall asleep to. And before you go, tell me, where are you listening from? And what time is it where you are right now? Because no matter where you are in the world, you, me, and everyone else tuned in, we all share the same little habit. We use history to dream. Good night.